All right, so fun block coming up. CNN anchors got trolled. I mean, this is like long-term troll, right? This is like deep troll. Someone had to create the name Big Balls and then use it and then get hired by Elon at Doge in order to get all these reporters to say Big Balls like 20, 30 times, man. And then we had a short Kanye clip just because it goes with kind of the same pop culture theme of this block. And then we have to go cover the USAID story. So it's about to get serious, but before we get serious, let's laugh about big balls in the news this week being bounced around.
The purpose here is simple. To strengthen what is weak. Make hard what is soft. Where mind is master of the body, you will be warrior once more.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. After Donald Trump's total debanking of his political enemies and destruction of the deep state and talking about conquering Canada and Greenland and Panama, oh, baby. Libs have finally found something that they are going to rally around. They finally found the real thing to be outraged about from their perspective. Big balls. Ladies and gentlemen, a member of Elon Musk's Doge team is named Big Balls. And it led to a CNN segment that had us howling with laughter, and this Chiron is real. Doge teen known as Big Balls, now a government expert. You can literally hear this photo. Mom said you have to play with me. Elon Musk's Doge lieutenant, X-rated online pseudonym, leaves CNN hosts flummoxed. This is Big Balls. Oh no! There we go. There's Big Balls. One of Elon Musk's Doge staffers, self-proclaimed nickname Big Balls, has left CNN host discussing the moniker on air. Shocked. Like this.
This is a 19-year-old high school graduate who has used the unfortunate nickname Big Balls online. So that would be one way that we could refer to him. He is now working at Musk's behest inside Doge. And we looked into his background. And so we found several notable things, Aaron, one of which is that this individual has founded multiple companies, including one with another unfortunate name, Tesla.sexy LLC.
That's an amazing name. Why couldn't you? What's wrong with that name? It's a great name for a company. Tesla Sexy LLC. I might start doing business.
Tesla Sexy. Do you know what that means, Scott?
Tesla Sexy. I don't know. I can't think.
Why would that kid? So he's supposed to be a really smart kid, and like he bought some intellectual property, and it's Tesla Sexy LLC. Does anyone know?
Other than the Elon reference, let me think. Hold on.
Elon named his cars after letters in order to spell the word sexy. I've heard him say it. He thinks it's funny, right? So everyone who's making fun of that, well, I guess like you don't know what the dude's doing, and I guess it's hard to make fun of him if you don't know what he's doing, right? He has a sense of humor. Whether or not he's a technocrat, New World Order guy, remains to be seen. But he does have a sense of humor that's intact. And so that kid, that's actually a savvy move because Elon himself could buy that from that kid and be like, I want that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's a Tesla Model S,
Model
Model
S,
3, the Model X, the Model Y. Okay, that's
right.
What it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Elon did it on purpose.
I got you.
Right? Just like he gave his kids different names. Mm-hmm. Like all people give their children different names, but he really went to the next marker if you look up his children's names. but don't be a stalker. All right, moving along. Let's go ahead. Keep playing, Benny.
Under that company name. We'll see. We'll see if it's for sale. And there's nothing wrong with making a joke, right? Like, it's a funny joke. And I will not be lectured to by the people who allowed this to happen to our federal government. They not only voted for this, they supported this and then funded it. They gave this pagan degeneracy access to the halls of our government. Of course, many of these images have to be heavily censored for our channel to stay up. It's so sick and perverted. Yet they're upset at a teenager making a joke that literally every teenage young man has made in their life. A dick joke, right? Yeah. Speaking of people being dicks.
Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with Musk and Big Balls.
Big balls.
Big balls.
Big Balls, who work for Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, Doge.
In the one case of the Big Balls kid, a literal teenager.
Big Balls online.
Big Balls here that Katie's talking about. A 19-year-old that goes by the username Big Balls.
So that would be one way that we could refer to him.
Young computer whizzes, the aforementioned Big Balls.
Because who among us doesn't feel better about Big Balls, Big Balls, Big Balls in charge of American air traffic control?
These Karens don't look happy. Having to discuss big balls on live television can't be fun. 20-year-old Doge geniuses finding out that the country is run by 50 to 70-year-olds who can't use a computer without their grandson's help. Doge team members began screaming at senior developers, calling them idiots. Not gonna lie, sounds pretty cool. Could you imagine being whoever this harpy is and being forced to spend all day researching this kid's meme shitcoin accounts, right? It's like, this is what you've done. You're a grown ass adult, and then you have to go on and do this like huffy breath, like, you can't believe it. And you spent all day looking through this guy's 4chan account and his meme coins. Oh, your work is so serious. You're like a Woodward and Bernstein. You're just like the same. You're such high-minded journalism. You can't make this up. Everyone's laughing. I don't really have a problem with somebody founding a company called Tesla Sexy LLC. Kind of sexist for a woman to be talking about balls when they clearly have no clue what they're talking about. Not very inclusive. Spotted outside of Doge headquarters. Exclusive Doge staffers' identity revealed. Harry Balls, Big Balls, Dick Hertz, Ligma Johnson, and Biggest Dickus. Oh no, I can't believe they doxed Doge. Ron Wyden tomorrow. Tell Elon Musk to get his big balls off your money. Big Balls 2028. I personally voted for Big Balls. We're having too much fun. Wait until you hear about Harry Nutt's father. Somehow, useless bureaucrats getting fired by Doge employees are much better when you know the person firing them goes by Big Balls and probably says no cap. Oh man, I need my urgent matter elevated to the desk of Big Balls. Oh man, something has become abundantly clear. AI won't take your job. A 19-year-old named Big Balls will. Dan Bongino saying, hear me out. I'm officially enjoying this Big Balls story. I'm enjoying it because it's a near perfect example of how reflexively anti-Trump media still confuse who's in charge now. These communist clowns still think they're in charge of what news to isolate, polarize, and weaponize. But they're not even close. Between Trump and massive megaphone and MAGA influencers, the story of Big Balls is hilarious, and it's a rallying cry, and it's a joke. Shout out to the dude called Biz Balls, you broke liberals. I saw people on the left and the right actually attacking CNN for this. Like, this is a good example, right? They're outraged over Musk hiring a 19-year-old big ball Doge workers. Remember this the next time they push for 16-year-olds to vote. That's right. Look at this. Employee of the Month plaque already set. Corporate media can't help it. And the teenage prodigy with Doge on CNN got CNN to say big balls on air. Yeah, I mean, this is the point, right? Don't you understand? You're being trolled. You're being trolled. Like this kid clearly is doing this to maybe they went back in and like changed their name just because they knew that CNN would be outraged by it and would do this story. Amazing. The hero we didn't know that we needed. CNN is out here clutching their pearls over silly internet usernames that kids created. I voted for the felon, the hillbilly, the space dude, and for big balls. How about you? Should Elon Musk and Doge bring back big balls? Should Doge staffer who made inappropriate statements via a now deleted pseudonym? So this is Elon Musk's poll that he put up because apparently big balls had to be let go because of some other naughty statements that he made. And the vast majority of people who voted, and there were nearly 400,000 votes, said yes, bring him back. Everybody said yes, big balls deserves a second chance. Seriously. True, says Elon Musk. And now the voice of the president, Dan Scavino, who's Donald Trump's digital voice online, posted this AI of Elon and Donald Trump holding two giant orange balls. Ladies and gentlemen, J.D. Vance went in hard in the defense of this young man, which I think is just the sharpest take, man. For the he was being attacked by a member of Congress. Let me zip out here. This is why J.D. Vance is just like absolute gold, platinum, top tier selection for VP. Here's my view. I obviously disagree with some of the posts, but I don't think stupid social media activity should ruin a kid's life. We shouldn't reward journalists who try and destroy people ever. So I say bring him back. If he's a bad dude or a terrible member of the team, fire him for that. Then Ro Khanna says, are you going to have him apologize for saying normalize Indian hate before he is rehired? Just for the sake of both of our kids. For the sake of both of our kids, grow up, says J.D. Vance. Racist trolls on the internet, while offensive, don't threaten my kids. You know what does? A culture that denies grace to people for their mistakes. A culture that encourages congressmen to act like whiny children. I cannot overstate how much I loathe the emotional blackmail, pretending to be concerned. My kids, God willing, will be risk takers. They won't think constantly about whether a flippant comment or a wrong viewpoint will follow them around for the rest of their lives. They will tell stupid jokes. They will develop views that they later think are wrong or even gross. I made mistakes as a kid, and I thank God that I grew up in a culture that encouraged me to grow and learn and feel remorse when I screwed up and offer grace to others when they do. I don't worry about my kids making mistakes or developing views that I later regret. I don't even worry about that much on trolls on the internet. Do you know what I do worry about? Talking to the Democrat Congressman, Ro Khanna, that they'll grow up to be a U.S. congressman who engages in emotional blackmail over kids' social media posts. You disgust me. And Elon Musk saying he will be brought back to err as human, to forgive as divine. Let's go. Oh, man. We literally saved big balls, ladies and gentlemen, and nobody has ever been more angry than the harpies over on CNN. Look at this image. Look at this image. This is what we did by electing Donald Trump in 2024. Greatest moment. Arguably in American history, you know? In modern American history? Yeah, for sure. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe.
So Kanye has been... Wait, did he delete all of his tweets? No. And so... Okay, so basically Kanye, people might not believe this, but this actually wasn't Kanye going crazy. This was actually him submitting his job application to join Doge. As he's saying here, all white people are racist. I'm a Nazi. I love Hitler. And so Kanye's been having a real one recently. I want this to get old. Me loving Hitler is old news. this is nuts. Not deleted. Keep scrolling on the posts. All the rappers want my spot. Who's your top 5 baddest bitches of all time? I used to be broke and I can't relate to brokenness and I don't want to. This broke ass individual gets it. Keep my wife name out of your mouth, you broke ass troll. I mean, Hitler was so fresh. That's a lot of fucking likes for Hitler being fresh. And all of these tweets, by the way, this is in like 7 hours. Anyway, does he know Hitler hates black people? He would probably say, I hate black people too. I don't know. Like, the thing with Kanye West is I literally don't know how he would respond to that information. Would he say, that's why I like him? Would he say, oh no, that's not true? Like, I don't know what he would do. I have no idea.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Well, he doesn't. That's been established. That's where Kanye came on the map. Like, I didn't know who he was. I've never, to this day, I've still never listened to his music. But when he said that back at the Superdome, that was the Katrina, New Orleans flood, and he said that George Bush doesn't care about black people. Who's standing right next to Mike Myers, not the serial killer from Halloween, but the guy from Austin Powers.
Well, just in the last few minutes, a new development has happened. Even still, it was just brought to my attention.
Kanye Gate.
Well, so apparently Ye took out a Super Bowl ad. I didn't know. This is actually good. You listeners, if you guys have just been watching the show, you may not be aware of this, but I put it in the production chat. Is there any way to play his Super Bowl ad real quick? I don't know.
Well, I got it right here. I mean, he shot it on an iPhone. He tells people to go to Yeezy.com.
Go to Yeezy.com and then type in Yeezy.com. Go to Yeezy.com, dude. There's only he used to have like 50 clothing items in the shop, but now there's only one.
Fuck.
He deleted all of it.
He spent $5 million to get people to go to Yeezy.com to see. It's not even the Raelian symbol. Remember when he got in touch? Like, he got in trouble for the Raelian symbol. Do you guys know what? That's better to type in.
Talk about trolls. That is the ultimate troll right there, dude.
I mean,
something else, dude.
No. They don't want to. They don't want to show me the Wikipedia for the thing that I was just looking for. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. It's spelled Raeli. Do I have? Let's see. Maybe here. Alien. No, man.
Oh, that's so funny.
Toby Wong. I got it. Here it is. It'll pay off right here. Kanye got in trouble he texted this symbol on Twitter one time, right? And people took it as an anti-Semitic. No, this is like an alien cult. It's a religious movement. This is their official symbol. It has to do with extraterrestrials. There's a bunch of wacky stuff that goes on with it. But so, like, I thought maybe he would do something like that. That would be edgy. But no, he went full on straight. What's that movie with Ed Norton?
Oh, yeah. American History X. Yeah.
Dude.
Oh, he posted he posted that shirt earlier and said, I'm going to put this in the shop. And he didn't. And then he made a post that said, I would never sell something like that. I wouldn't want my fans to get beat up in public. I love my fans. I would never do that.
He took all the other products off his page.
Took all of them off.
He had a $5 million Super Bowl ad, and that's the only shirt.
You know what's funny though too is like I've been following this saga for the last few days. It's been very, very entertaining, and just because like I'm just like, dude, like there's nothing like this out there right now. So I went to the site and I noticed all of his clothing items. You know, you think it'd be like super expensive designer clothes and stuff. Like everything was only $20, and so I ordered some like slippers, some $20 slippers, and I got a shirt. White Lives Matter, you know, just to put in it's a time capsule item. This is a very historic time, so I do have a White Lives Matter shirt.
He's definitely making history.
Yeah,
for rail. He's making it for rail.
Yeah,
I don't know that dude. He knows how to get attention. I just don't know that he knows what to do with it.
Exactly. He needs to take autonomy, dude. He needs to take the autonomy course. Oh no. Okay, no.
I have to protect my community, and I don't think any of us would be too entertaining. I mean, it would be entertaining for ha-has, but I don't think that would be a good thing whatsoever. It's not for everybody. It's for people who watch Grand Theft World that care about details and thinking their way out of situations. That dude seems to be immune to all good advice. Somebody had to tell him that's not a good idea, and he had to say no, or did someone just say yes, sir?
Well, that's been the nature of all of his posts, is saying nobody owns me, nobody runs me, I do whatever I want. And he made that
apparently no one stood in the way of that. When I saw American History X, it came out, I'm gonna guess 1998 or something like that. I was in Germany and I went to see it at the movies, and we're watching the movie. First off, it's a disturbing movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a disturbing movie to start with. And then there were some people in the theater, I found out, who were like, do they have neo-Nazis in Germany? I guess they do. Still have Nazis. I don't know if they're new, but these dudes were like skinhead. And then there was like mixed couples up in the front. And then there's like I left the movie because I thought people were about to get killed. I was like, this is not good. Like, there were people cheering. Like, I was like, this is not a good place to be. And I was kind of shocked at the culture over there from that. But, you know, places have, it's like, you know, there's some still stuff that goes on in the South. Some people who die hard to racist ideas and doesn't leave very easily and goes on to the next generation. I guess they have it over there too. So, yeah, that type of, I don't think that's the best way that Kanye could have used his money, his ad, or directed people's attention. I think that's just him giving a big FU to the establishment that debanked him. Right.
Yeah.
And he's probably selling shirts to all the wrong people right now.
I gotta give
like
him
he's
props,
probably selling shirts to people who would not like him because of his skin color, which he couldn't control, right? Which is ignorance. So anyway, we'll leave that all there. I'm sure he'll pop up again later. Right now, we got to get to USAID and how the deep state hive got destroyed. It's much like the Empire Strikes Back, or no, Star Wars, where they hit the Death Star through the exhaust port, right? It's like it's a super tough thing, destroys planets, but like if you hit it in this one place, it blows up. USAID apparently is kind of like that. If you would have said, hey, let's come up with a plan, and like, you know, for the administration, I don't know how that's a deep state thing. That thing has so many tentacles and there's so many other things that are international. How would you even go about getting rid of it? And they just got rid of it. And then everyone started to find out where all its money was going. And I think that's the interesting part of the story. So there's two parts. Like the first, that they were even able to get to the hive and get rid of it. That's a real... Because, like, that's the agency that does all the dirty work with a front. You know, it's a cover for covert actions. And it's nonprofit foundation level, which is like Ford Foundation, Rockefeller, CIA was funded by all those nonprofit foundations. So, I don't know. Again, I find it encouraging. I never thought during my lifetime that people would just, like, get whole... blankets, fired from the CIA, or just get rid of USAID and start cutting off the deep state infiltration of this country, the Anglo-American, Israeli, NATO deep state. It's the definition of it from my perspective. So we're going to see Elon's people got doxxed. So he's got a bunch of kids from like 19 to 25, these wunderkinds, and then the internet started going crazy about big balls, but they also got death threats. You know, and these guys are just going through spreadsheets looking for like stolen money, your money that got stolen, right? So we're going to see that. And then we're going to see a variety of ways that USAID has effed with our tax dollars. And then we'll keep getting updates on Kanye's state of mental health. Because we didn't even get to the Grammys, with the thing he did at the Grammys, right? Which, you know, some people said it's like a humiliation ritual.
Yeah.
I was like, for who? Right? Yeah. She might have cut a deal. Like, hey, I'll do this thing and get you all this attention. You let me walk with you on the red carpet. I don't know. She's with them for a reason. I don't know. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's love. I would not let the woman I love walk around like that. Maybe not. The fur coat. The fur coat worked for me. Like, you know, But the whole, like, you know, I don't know. On the other hand, people were born naked like people used to be naked. I don't know. Maybe he's making an artistic statement. I can't understand because he's so high-minded.
Yeah. Well, today there was this whole run where he was just posting hardcore pornography on his thing.
Whoa.
On Twitter, because it's allowed on Twitter, right? So he was
I did
just
not
posting
see any of that.
Yeah, he was posting like hardcore XXX pornography on his timeline.
I was a sucker editing video all day, missing out on the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
He's posting. All right, so in this next block, we're going to learn the origin of like the power base of Doge, how they're doing this, and then we're going to look at Doge's first 2 weeks at work. And there's a lot more where that came from, and Colby's got it all set up, so let's embark.
President Trump and Elon Musk are moving forward to make significant changes to the U.S. Agency for International Development, and critics are arguing USAID has become a slush fund wasting taxpayer money. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt gave a blistering account of the agency's absurd spending yesterday.
Here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look, because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government.
Wow. I hope they were taking notes. Now we're learning more about Elon Musk's small army to cut the wasteful spending. These young engineers were reportedly handpicked by Elon Musk, and the oldest is just 25 years old, and some of them are reportedly still in college. Joey, I took notes. $1.5 million to advance the DEI in Serbia's workforces.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, USAID.
So I have an anecdote for you. I have a friend. She texted me a few hours ago, unsolicited. Didn't know I was on the show today. She said, I've been a contractor, subcontractor for USAID for 30 years. She said, I've been saying for a long time to my friends and family that it's a wasteful agency. We've done some of the stupidest projects you can ever imagine. Although it's now putting me partially out of business, it's a good thing, and that's what I voted for. That's from somebody who has been a contractor, subcontractor, who has firsthand experience for 3 decades. I think it was Harold Ford yesterday on the 5 said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, sometimes that's exactly what you need to do. Sometimes you need to hit delete and then start over again. Because the people that are working in that agency, they were approving these things. So that's a part of their ethos. And if they have to go home and not come back to work, that's probably the best thing that should happen.
Rebecca?
Well, listen, it not only is it waste, but a lot of times, a lot of this stuff aggravates our allies and partners. It's ideologically controversial, so it's pushing things like abortion on conservative countries, or the LGBTQ issue, or climate ideology, and it aggravates our partners and allies. Of course, it aggravates a lot of Americans as well, and sometimes violates the consciences of our Americans. Don't even want our taxpayer dollars to go to these things. But I think the larger point is USAID was never meant to be purely charity, purely altruism. It's supposed to align with American foreign policy objectives and make sure that we have countries that are siding with the United States against our adversaries. Last point, recently went to a trip to India. India, conservative country. We want to partner with India to counter China. The Indian officials I talked to said they were irritated by the progressive policies that the Biden administration foisted on them. It hurt our relationship with India.
Yeah, I wonder how Serbia's workforces would feel about all that DEI. I'm sure they don't turn down the
IRS audits you. You, bitch. It audits you. And they're terrified that your dollars could be used to audit them. Is anyone else seeing this shit?
Okay, so look, this has been the top trend for the last really day and a half, USAID. Okay. We're going to have Mr. Mike Benz on the show here in just a little bit, who's really an expert in this, and he's broken a lot of these stories. What you're hearing from the media is that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are trying to, I guess, tyrannically take over data. No, what's happening is we are looking for fraud in government. We are looking for inefficiencies. And people's work computers, the stations where they work, those offices that may be engaging in said fraud or wasteful activity, should be examined and should not be wiped before people can go in. Before we get into USAID, okay, we can find no common ground if we don't all agree that it's a problem, irrefutably, that the government, the federal government, loses $233 billion to $521 billion a year in fraud. That's not just wasteful spending, that's no idea what's happened to it. $500 billion a year in fraud. Even if you're a big government Democrat, I would imagine you don't believe it's the government's job to engage in fraud. But if we can't even start examining that, well, then we end up with the demagoguery that you see with USAID. So, $500 billion annually in fraud. All right, let's start with that. Then 97% of all donations from USAID employees went directly to Democrats. Have I set the stage? Are you starting to get the picture? Okay, you may not have been super familiar with USAID until this weekend, but I would imagine you've heard of it by now.
It is the essential programs that USAID provided that kept my family and I fed and safe.
As we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms.
AID is an essential instrument of U.S. foreign policy and U.S. national security policy.
This is a real bureaucratic mess, the USAID. The money's being spent and shoveled to countries all over the world, countries that hate us, for programs that, I mean, you have countries where people are starving and they're focusing on, DEI.
At the point at which you don't merely, like, if you've got an apple that's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a ball of worms, it's hopeless.
Okay. And
Elon puts a fine point on the
Yes, he does.
Really quickly, Elon Musk actually tweeted something out this morning, guys, if you can look at it, either last night or this morning, where he said he thinks the number is actually higher than the $521 billion. I think he said it's as high as like 10%, which I think came out to about $700 billion. And then he put another $1+ trillion on waste on top of that.
On top of the fraud.
These numbers, I think, are going to grow the more we get into it.
Yes.
It's worse.
Absolutely. And before we get to the specifics, where we can give you some examples of USAID. USAID is the perfect example. It's the poster boy for fraud, waste, and government inefficiency, and really an entire money laundering, an entire organization that has no business existing.
Yeah.
You think Washington, Jefferson, Madison, you think they would have stood for this crap? Wait till I get to the examples. But as a quick refresher, let's look at the timeline and what USAID is. Okay, so USAID is the United States Agency for International Development. Their yearly budget is like $40 billion, okay? It was founded in 1961, supposed to be an independent agency, gets their guidance from Secretary of State. According to its now defunct website, that part I like. Here's the part I don't like, the description. Tell me if you think this is overly broad. We work together with individuals, okay, and communities, well, that's everything, and countries globally to improve everyday lives. What? Imagine that on Shark Tank. Well, what are you doing? We're improving lives.
Where?
How? With individuals, okay, in communities, all right, in countries, yeah, improving their lives. What do you do? And we'll get to what they consider.
I know military people and veterans right now are watching this going, oh, that was on my my evaluation report, my NCOER, my OER. That's what got me a promotion, was that description right there.
It's one, like, there's a fear of accountability from the left. And so if you set up the premise so broad that no one can call you on it, hey, guess what? Start examining that, you're going to find some fraud. And we have. So here is, by the way, USAID's 2023 Year in Review video hosted by Fraggle Rock Elizabeth Warren.
As this year comes to a close, I want to share some of the progress we have made with partners around the globe to build a more equitable, resilient, and humane world.
Earthworm Jane.
This year, we rushed aid to tens of millions of people in 76 emergencies, including the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, the conflict in Sudan, and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We built coalitions to support countries experiencing democratic openings, drawing in $110 million from private sector and philanthropic partners to bolster reform efforts.
What about the other $39 billion?
Ukrainian businesses, farmers,
don't worry about it.
and tech
Ukraine.
to help Ukraine's economy return to growth, even amidst Putin's brutal war. On behalf of all of us here at USAID, thank you for supporting our mission to extend the reach of human dignity across the planet. I wish you peace and joy this holiday season.
So, little kind of, nuggets here. Peace and joy this holiday season. Humanity, dignity, a haircut like that. You can guess 97% of USAID donations going to Democrats.
Yes.
What do you think that includes? Do you think that includes actual human rights, freedom of speech, No, it does not. No. It includes gender identity and every single woke new cause du jour that you can insert.
Right.
Let me give you the timeline here because the left is they're really hell-bent on telling you that Donald Trump is a tyrant. Okay. This is not an example of something being shut down. This is an example of blatant insubordination when you have a government looking to save taxpayers' dollars. Let me give you the timeline. Monday, January 20th, Donald Trump signed an executive order to pause foreign aid for 90 days. Totally reasonable. Monday, January 27th, nearly 60 USAID employees were placed on leave for directly circumventing Trump's executive order.
60 employees.
In other words, it was an executive order at that point, pause, and you had 60 employees saying no. That's a mutiny, just to be clear. According to Elon Musk on X, again, he's biased, he said all Doge did was check to see which federal organizations were violating the president's executive orders the most. Turned out to be USAID, so that became our focus.
Keep that overlay up really quickly. I want you to see what he's responding to, right? So he says this person is supposed to have, there's like a thread of this, friends inside the Democrat Party. This is very, very telling. He says, talk to a friend who has connections within the Democratic Party, and he said the level of panic over Trump and Elon shutting down the USAID is unlike anything he's ever seen.
Right.
That's what Elon is responding to. And it's like Democrats are freaking out. They didn't freak out. They're wiping hard drives. LGBTQ stuff. They didn't freak out about they didn't freak out about anything like they're freaking out about this. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to who is freaking out. Yes. That is going to matter. And Elon's like, we just simply were looking for the place that was doing the most. It turns out it's USAID.
Right. And by the way, this is an organization. This is we're not even talking about just citizens. We are talking about the organism that is government and its function. When people say, oh, tyranny, if I were to come in, and I do on the weekend, right, I'll go to them, hey, where's this sketch that we were working on? I want to look through it. I'm not going through your private stuff and asking for your private computer at home. It's a work computer. Right. That's where the sketch exists. That's where the script exists, right?
Almost like you own it.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, hold on a second. Taxpayers, we own it. Donald Trump said, hey, I want to see what it is that you're working on. And by God, this is where they make their stand against a tyrant.
In my office of business.
Yes.
Might as well have ended that review video with, and don't worry about the rest.
Yes, exactly.
It's none of your business what else we did.
So then on Saturday, February 1st, this Saturday, the USA Director of Security was placed on leave for refusing access to Doge employees. Think about that. So Doge comes in and says, okay, we're going to look at what you guys are working on and see if it's efficient, see if there's any waste. I will not.
Wait.
What?
No, you kind of have to.
You can do that? Again, this is how disconnected they are from reality. I'm imagining you're watching right now, listening. You probably work in the private sector. Do you get to tell your employer, I will not show up for my performance review? Well, you're fired.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Yeah, that's the review. You're gone. We need go no further. Monday, February 3rd, Donald Trump addressed the situation directly, and we'll get to the waste here in a second, from the Oval Office.
The first term, though, USAID was something that you liked in some respects.
I love the concept of it.
That's a program.
Sure, I love the concept, but they turn out to be radical left lunatics. And the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people.
I love that he doesn't mince words.
Could you have a more clear example of, I've always been bothered by this, public servants.
Yeah.
These are public servants. Their stand is against you. Hey, the government has the right to audit you, but you don't have the right to audit the government in any capacity. $500 billion and half a trillion in fraud. You realize the government, it is no longer, it's nothing. If not an abusive relationship, if the government can audit you whenever it wants, and it can never be audited. These public servants are taking a stand against you because they believe they are above you. You work in the private sector. You have to deal with accountability. We don't. Who cares if there's $500 billion in fraud?
Pull it up. Pull it up, the quote from Elon Musk, the tweet that I was talking about. He's getting to the bottom. He's like $700 billion a year. Outright waste is at least 15%. So another $1 trillion plus.
Yes.
If Musk is right, he's basically getting $2 trillion out of our deficit. We had a $2 trillion deficit or close to it last year. There you go. Balance the budget. Done.
People said it could never be done. Could never be done. You could also never deport people.
Yeah.
Well, here you are. You could also never go back to two genders. Well, here you are.
Yeah. This is the first stone they turned over.
I know. I know. It's like me with my yard and the rocks and the wolf spiders. I'm like, the first one. You little prick.
And they sent 6 young tech nerds to go and do this. It wasn't like they sent in the Gestapo to go in.
No. Yeah, that's how they act. They act like guys came in
Literally.
with AR-15s or M4s.
These kids are like, I think from like 22 to 27 years old. There's 6 of them. They got doxxed and now they're pissed off. They're like, I can't believe they sent these guys in. And Elon Musk's an idiot. I don't know. He's sending rockets to space and catching them. Maybe he knows a thing or two about something. He sends some tech geniuses in there. They go in and are like, you can't do it. Here are their names. Maybe we should make their lives miserable.
Right.
That's the left's reaction.
I think Toole put it very. It's the first stone they turned over.
The
very first one, and we will get to all of the crystal clear examples. And you can come and let me know if you think it's a legitimate role of government as we get to them. But of course, the left has been in an absolute meltdown ever since they have faced any kind of accountability here.
Whoever is here at AID or at least witnessed firsthand what is happening with this Elon Musk attempted takeover, which will not stand.
This is something that's just going to make our country less safe and really shows the undermining of rule of law in our nation.
There are people right now who have HIV who are alive only because the United States is making sure of that. Donald Trump says, we don't care. You go die.
We also know this is just the beginning. If Doge attacks USAID today, then you can be sure they'll move on to another target tomorrow.
Good.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Postal Service or the IRS.
You promise? I already support it. Again, we cannot find common ground if we're saying the exact same thing with an entirely different visceral reaction. Chuck Schumer, is saying if they go after and audit the USAID, they could possibly look at auditing with the IRS or the Post Service. And I'm going, hey, maybe we can audit the Postal Service or IRS. Think about how much they hate you. The IRS audits you, bitch, it audits you, and they're terrified that your dollars could be used to audit them. Is anyone else seeing this shit?
Well, you cut the clip short. He went on to say, and who knows, they might even look into Senate spending. They might want to know what we're doing in the Senate House.
They might go in the wax and maize and find out it's just corn. Yes, I think the agency that has audited Americans needlessly and just welcomed 78,000 new not agents, employees. I think that one audit of the auditing agency is entirely reasonable. You don't hate the left enough. Do you understand this? Let's go through the claims that have been made about this, and it's so asinine. And by the way, you guys can click right there, sign up Rumble Premium. We are only able to do this because of your membership. Mug Club is now Rumble Premium. Rumble Premium is Mug Club. You get this entire program. You keep watching 100% More Show, Friday Show, Nick DiPaolo, Dr. Disrespect, Russell Brand, ad-free Rumble experience. None of it happens without you. I'm sorry for losing my mind, but I guess I'm the only... Sometimes I just... Am I the... Can you imagine auditing the auditors? No. All right. Here's a claim that they are making. That it's illegal for President Trump to shut down USAID.
As my colleague said, it's not only a gift to our adversaries, but trying to shut down the Agency for International Development by executive order is plain illegal. It is illegal.
Here's the truth. No, it's not. And he's not trying to what he's doing is not shutting down USAID.
No.
They're trying to roll USAID under the State Department, cut funding, in the workforce, if there are inefficiencies, if there is some kind of waste, which we know there is, and for it to remain pretty much exclusively a humanitarian agency. What he is saying is illegal. What he means to say is you can never downsize any government organization ever. That's illegal. That's his argument, okay?
And they didn't try to shut it down. Remember the timeline. They basically passed did some executive orders, then went in to try to do some auditing, and USAID said no. They're like, oh, there must be so much fraud here.
Yes.
None of you can come. 10,000 people were told to stay home from work on Monday because, you know, I don't know, bleach bit, whatever the Hillary Clinton thing did to the servers. Like, we don't want you going in there when we're investigating you and deleting everything.
Yes.
So that's all that's happened right now.
Here's exactly what happened with USAID. If you have a child, okay, and you said, you ever gone through this situation, clean up your room. And you go in, you go, oh, everything put where it's supposed to be? And your son or daughter says yes. And you say, oh, but the closet. And they say, no. Did you put everything in the closet?
Don't look.
No. Did you just stuff everything in the closet? If you open that up, is everything going to come tumbling down? So open it. USAID refuses to open the closet. Only we know there's likely fraud and potential sex trafficking in there. So, Marco Rubio, who was now named acting director of USAID, confirmed this very fact from El Salvador.
Can it be reformed or does it need to die? Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone, we work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator. I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do. That makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through.
Completely reasonable.
Humanity. And I still don't know if it's USAID or USAID. I don't care.
I think USAID makes it sound like they don't do anything wrong.
Right.
Like they want it to be that. USAID, but you said USAID.
Yeah, I prefer those. You guys can comment what you prefer, what you use. Here's another claim that the left is making. And this is the virtue signaling, is that USAID, they're doing God's work. Come on, guys. This is noble work. So Amy Klobuchar posted this on X. Said, shutting down USAID is not about efficiency. It's about undermining America's global leadership. USAID counters extremism, fights diseases, and creates more markets for United States exports. Hold on a second. Those shouldn't all fall under one umbrella.
No.
It's like, you're jack of all trades, master of none. I don't know, but it seems to me that if you are really good at countering terrorism, extremism, probably not a specialist in fighting diseases and opening up export markets for commodities.
Go ahead,
you can't do all of this. Oh, that's right. Fraud.
Now that we got the Amy Klobuchar quote on the record, we'll move on and build on that because there might be a USAID connection to the Wuhan lab and the worldwide pandemic. I call it USAID because it has nothing to do with aid. It's an agency for international development, which means undermining governments around the world as soft power for intelligence agencies to reap the benefits of plundering the production of other countries. It's been going on a long time. We should know more about it. We're going to learn a lot more because USAID has some very interesting contributions, and there's a bevy of clips that we need to sort through to see all the various tentacles that it had out there. But before we get into the next bundle of clips, what were your notes on that section, Scott? What did you learn, or what did you learn about Kanye while we were watching those clips? Either one.
Either way, yeah, no updates on Kanye, but really what stands out to me is like just the reaction of this, and we talked about it at the beginning where it's like, something to keep an eye on, but also just like all the typical cast of characters coming out of the woodworks, complaining about this.
Schumer.
Schumer, that was just so funny.
Schumer put Ross Ulbricht in prison.
And what was Elizabeth Warren. So it's just the same cast of characters playing their role exactly the way you'd expect them to do.
Deep State Renfields.
Exactly. I saw a reel earlier that just really characterized it so much. It's kind of of like the example used was it's like a girlfriend like stealing her boyfriend's phone and locking herself in the bathroom and going through his phone, and he's pounding on the door saying like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're finding out all my secrets. And she comes out and like shows him, what's this? He's like, oh, well, you're violating my privacy by looking at this. Like, you're the bad guy for looking at this. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're the one that did the dirty deeds. You know, I'm not the one here that's, because I'm exposing or discovering your dirty deeds. I'm not the bad guy here. So even though that sounds like a toxic relationship that probably shouldn't be to begin with, but at the same time, it's a good analogy to kind of what we're seeing here. It's just like, why are you being so upset? Are you by any chance guilty of a lot of crimes and just malfeasance? Would that happen to be what's going on here? Why are you so adamant about stopping this process? Like,
they're sitting on a gravy train, and they don't know how to, like, if they knew how to go support themselves, maybe they wouldn't be a crook in the first place. But like, these are hives of crooks that got together and taken the money and doing the deeds for not America, which is very un-American.
Very un-American.
And it needs to be rooted out,
America's back, baby.
Or maybe America's front. I don't know.
Yes.
All right, so coming up, we have the bishop who attacked Trump, who also received $53 million in taxpayer funds. And then USAID gave millions to the New York Times and Politico and Ken Klippenstein and Media Matters and other places that have been like mouthpieces against freedom, if you will. And then we have USAID's shadow operations exposed. That's a video by Really Graceful from this past week. So we'll take those in before we get to more of the Wuhan variety of USAID crimes. But let's go to it and go ahead and let it rip, Colby.
Post-millennial. You guys may have seen the story. Trump was at a prayer service, and this super woke bishop did the whole woke thing of, we're so nice. Won't you have mercy? Well, it was brutal and annoying. As it turns out, the Episcopal bishop who attacked Trump received $53 million in taxpayer funds.
Unreal.
According to records, EMM received $53 million of funds from various government programs to resettle 3,600 individuals in 2023. So let's start over. Instead of this individual, I'd like to translate for you, of course, as she was preaching to Donald Trump saying, please have mercy. I would like to translate that to modern English. Please, Mr. President, don't shut down my kickbacks and the money flowing to my organizations, which make me very wealthy. Have mercy.
I mean, it's not a shock. I mean, everyone in D.C. it seems is part of the swamp. What it was a Unitarian church, was it?
The Episcopal Migration Ministry.
Well, I mean,
but also, I mean, what is with the 501c3 in churches and synagogues and mosques anyway? I mean, Johnson, I think, put that in to control them. A good church with a good pastor and everything would be able to sustain itself. I mean, I think we have a big issue with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, normally you tithe. You donate to the church.
You get something, you give
They
back.
come and they go around with the collection plates and say, please give. And you know, I grew up Catholic. We would have they would give us a little box full of envelopes. And then every time you go to church, you'd put money in the little envelope and you'd put it in the collection tray. And that's what helps keep the church going.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So those donations are all, I believe they're all tax deductible. The church is allowed to do politics and things like that. That's codified. But then you find out that a lot of these groups, like there's like the Lutheran Ministries or whatever, was people were saying that they were getting hundreds of millions of dollars right after Biden lost the election.
Right.
Catholic Charities, I think, was also accused of getting a bunch of money and facilitating illegal immigration. What's up with that?
Yeah. Which is funny, too, because the left hates the Catholic Church and loves to talk about how evil the Catholic Church is anyways. So
depends on the church.
Well, it's Catholic Charities. That's the problem. Because, you know, I remember there was a document that Jamie Raskin and a couple other people gave to Biden and Harris. It was like the secular Democrats of America. And every single group on there was like Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Catholic, but they were all secular. Democrats. This is how a lot of the George Soros Open Society funded things have a religious tint to them, but they're not necessarily that. And I think that's a lot of the manipulation of names. Just like they say everything's about democracy, then when you put in a religious thing, because I know HIAS, which is I think Jewish Family Services, was funding a lot of the immigration. Catholic Charities was, UN was, but there was also multiple other religious organizations getting money to facilitate the open border. And you know what? You see the name and you see that it's a religious thing, and people just think, oh, they must be good. Well, that's not true. That's how they hide people that are not.
Yeah. Wasn't this particular, she's a bishop or whatever, wasn't she? Isn't she a member of the LGBTQ IA?
No, she's married and she has kids.
Oh, she's married and she has kids.
Well, here's the thing, though, about all these with these. I didn't think a woman could be a bishop, first of all, but I mean, I guess they
It's
can
Episcopal.
now. Oh, okay. Yeah.
It depends on the denomination.
Whatever the case may be,
Post-millennial
it's one
says-
of many, probably.
Post-millennial says, according to records, EMM received $53 million that we read. Since EMM has limited lobbying power, the Episcopal Church, a separate legal entity, advocates for additional programs that benefit EMM in Washington, D.C., the outlet said. A 2012 Government Accountability Office report states that funding is based on the number of refugees they serve. So affiliates have an incentive to maintain or increase the number of refugees they resettle each year, rather than allowing the number to decrease. Do you guys know the story of the snakes in India? Yes. I think it was India, right? I could be wrong. Basically, they had a snake problem. And so it was like the British colonists were like, what are we going to do about all these snakes? I got an idea. Through the power of decentralization, we can use the citizenry to deal with these snakes. So they put out a call to each and everybody who brings us the head of a snake. We will pay you. We'll pay you cash. So you know what those townspeople did? They started breeding them.
Oh,
brilliant.
Yep. Wow. And then the snake problem got substantially worse.
Oh, wow.
And so what happens is you get some refugees. The government says, we got to deal with this problem. How about we give grant money to various nonprofits to help deal with the refugees? Then what happens is all these organizations say, bring in illegal immigrants, we'll call them refugees. We'll get way more money from the government. And this is the perverse incentive we are witnessing. It has to stop.
Wow. It's true.
I mean, I don't see how this kind of stuff is completely and totally unsustainable, that we're, with as much debt as we have. And again, I will continue to reaffirm the fact that even though this is all bad, it's actually the unfunded liabilities that we have to worry about. It's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Those are the things that are actually driving the debt. But if you don't have a balanced budget, then it just goes into it only makes it worse.
Bro, so I dream of a balanced budget, man.
I mean, it would be wonderful. And I don't there's no legitimate reason why the United States can't have a balanced budget.
Well,
we have our GDP is like $29 trillion.
There's a legitimate reason. And that is that there's a bunch of skeevy, corrupt a-holes siphoning money and extracting the value and the labor for themselves.
Government needs the political platinum package. That's why we can't have a balanced budget.
That's right. I mean, us normies, we spend $20 a month for our Politico, but the government's like, no. You guys remember that?
Work for us.
You remember that app you could download where all it showed was a ruby on the screen and it cost $10,000? It was something like this. There was an app in the Google Play Store for $10,000, and all it did was show this image. And the point was that rich people would show it off like jewelry. Like I can spend $10,000 on an app. That's basically what the government's doing. When you show up, they're like, your department got you what? Silver tier? We're Platinum Pro.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember that scene from American Psycho where they're showing off their business cards?
Oh, yeah.
Basically
totally.
that. Basically that.
Sweating, looking at that. And
That's
they're
what
all
they're
so
like.
cool.
Yeah, he's sweating, spinning a laptop around, and it's like, Platinum Pro.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, you've got Platinum Pro. What does it give you? Well, when I read the news, there's little silver frilly things on the side.
See, Tim will
It's gotta be it.
Tim will reimburse us for the movies we go see, but he will not buy us the AMC Plus package.
No, never. We should totally do this. We should make it so that if you sign up to Timcast for $1,000 a month, there's gold trim on the side of the website.
It's gotta be something.
At least
like
somebody
that.
will do it.
I said earlier, I was like, if you sign up for $1,000 a month, I'll give you my phone number. Because then we have the Timcast Platinum Pro $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year package, and then all the people in government need it because they can get me on the phone.
No, it's an additional $1,000 to get you to answer. They can just have the number.
Yeah, I said you could have the number. I never said I'd answer.
Exactly.
Voicemails for the 1,000.
Come see us on tour in Dallas, Austin, Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, New York, Atlantic City, Levittown, Cohost, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for the link for the cheapest tickets. They found out through Auditing USAID, which is an unbelievable slush fund of corruption, criminality, and coups, deep state power to destabilize democracies. They also found out that Politico and the New York Times was getting money from USAID. The government was paying them money. The United States government. According to the Daily Mail, Politico swept up in USAID scandal as records show the government paid $8.2 million to left-leaning. They paid them $8.2 million. I'd like to get some of that money. I've got a news site. Left-leaning news outlet Politico was paid a staggering $8.2 million in government subsidies uncovered amid Elon Musk. Now, do you see why the media has their hair on fire over him doing this? Now do you see? The Department of Government Efficiency is in the process of canceling the payments from several government agencies, including the embattled USAID. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the money given to Politico was spent on essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the taxpayers' because nobody wanted to subscribe to Politico. Huh. So here she is. Let's listen.
I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than $8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOJ team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal government's books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not, that funding will no longer be sent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that effort. Thank you.
Details of the spend emerged amid scrutiny of the public finances by Musk's DOJ, which has shut down the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. Politico received $44,000 from USAID just last year, but was given millions more from other federal agencies, public records show. Most notably, the Department of Health and Human Services had $1.37 million in obligations. Really? Really? Well, my friends are going, my shitlib friends in Hollywood say, well, nice going, Jimmy. I guess we'll just have to wait for a cure for cancer since they cut the money to an agency that has nothing to do with it. This is obviously a huge waste of taxpayer money, Musk wrote on Twitter. It is understood that much of the agency's spending is on Politico's B2B service, Political Pro, which offers nonpartisan real-time intelligence personalized to their area of policy focus, according to the platform. Subscriptions can cost around $10,000 a year per online reports, meaning the government would have to have shelled out more than 800 accounts. Leavitt warned that DOJ is in on the process of pulling the plug on all payments. It could spell further disasters for Politico, whose staffers yesterday found out that they had not been paid. The outlet stated that the missed payments were due to a technical issue. However, speculation quickly began to swirl that the crackdown on public spending was to blame. Really? So remember what Politico used to say? Hunter Biden stories, Russian disinformation. Dozens of former intel officials say. Yeah, you're supposed to debunk them, but that's not what Politico does. USAID money. Look at all the money. Total money awarded, $8.1 million. So Political were receiving money, millions of dollars from the USAID. Then they used that money to push endless anti-Trump propaganda and intentionally deceive the American people. In other words, the Democrats were using our tax dollars to fund their fake news empire. Lee Fong, friend of the show, says these funds... So Bill Ackman says it's shocking that, but perhaps not surprising, that the Biden-Harris administration used USAID, the agency whose purpose is to administer the funding of international aid, to fund left-wing media organizations that attack the administration's opponents. These funds included payments during the first Trump administration, and the actual money from USAID to Politico was entirely for subscriptions and totaled $44,000. That's peanuts. Please, for the love of God, look at the details before tweeting. That's what Lee Fong says. Politico is not being funneled cash by USAID, says Isaac Saul. Political has a very expensive pro subscription that is an entire platform for tracking legislation, votes, lawsuits, reporting, and elite legislative analysis. These subscriptions cost north of $10,000. Private sector CEOs and lobbyists pay for them, as do government workers. I've subscribed and used them before. They are amazing tools for keeping an eye on the government. Political sells these premium trade pubs to agencies, government agencies like the private sector. They want to work on the best information follow. They, meaning CEOs and private corporations of the government, wouldn't pay if Politico wasn't producing value. Forcing the cancellation of these subscriptions is anti-capitalist nonsense that is going to make our government dumber, not smarter. But more importantly, it isn't some massive corrupt scheme. Politico does invaluable reporting in these trade publications, so people say. Chernovitz says Democratic government agencies definitely don't waste taxpayer money, and they'd never become a source of revenue for a friendly media outlet as a way to entangle their affairs. Nope. Would be unspeakable to imagine this. USAID does in fact fund journalism all over the world in a real way. Yeah, what they do is they create propaganda outlets that push CIA talking points. Like they do in Ukraine right now, like Vox Media that did a segment just on me and said that the truth I was telling about Ukraine was misinformation. That's what USAID does. That's how they fund journalism in a real way. With so he says what they do that with strings attached to tell reporters what to cover and how to shape public opinion. It's all about propaganda and regime change propaganda. That's what it's about. They don't care about journalism. This deserves scrutiny, but political subscriptions money conspiracy is crap. That's what he says. That's what he says. So, the U.S. government gave the New York Times tens of millions of dollars over just the past 5 years, despite paying relatively little money to the New York Times in years preceding 2021. For instance, in August 2024, the United States government awarded $4.1 million to the New York Times. The bulk of the funds came from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services at $26.9 million, followed by the National Science Foundation at $19 million. Really? It's good that we're finding all this out. I think it's great. So now we find out that the government's funding journalism. Journalism. Come see us on tour in Dallas, Austin, Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, New York.
Hey, internet friends. You know how we've been saying for years that nearly everyone in Washington, D.C. is crooked, laundering money overseas, and putting Americans last? Well, internet friends, you were right once again, but it's even worse than we thought. Way worse. Today, we're diving into a major shakeup in U.S. foreign aid that's got everyone abuzz and the cockroaches scattering. Today, we're talking about USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, and how recent actions by the Trump administration and Elon Musk are changing its future. I'll break it all down for you in this video. The U.S. Agency for International Development was established in 1961 by President Kennedy. And it's a large independent group that works around the world with its stated intention of providing help with health programs, education, and disaster aid in over 100 countries. It's essentially the agency or organization through which the U.S. offers help being in air quotes, to the world. So here's where it gets juicy. On January 20th, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order to freeze all USAID funding for 90 days while it's being investigated.
Well, it's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
Elon Musk, you didn't create USAID. The United States Congress did for the American people. And just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
This series of actions halted the organization's projects worldwide, or really halted their whole grift worldwide. And now certain members of Congress are throwing tantrums on TV because think of the children. Think of the children, right? They're saying that this halt could lead to global instability, as though we're so stable and well-adjusted already. It just seems like the never-ending payday for these people is over, at least for this agency, at least through this agency. Weirdly enough, and I say weirdly because I remember back when all the MAGA people hated this guy, Lil Marco Rubio. Secretary Marco Rubio is now acting as USAID head.
What's happening at USAID and how the country? Well, look, I mean, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so.
Here's where this investigation gets interesting, and I'm officially invested into this reality TV drama. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is handling part of the USAID investigation. Musk has called USAID a ball of worms and suggested it's beyond fixing. After his commentary, USAID's website went down and their X account vanished. Then enter stage left, 2 USAID security officials were sidelined for not letting Musk's team access classified info. So far, the investigation has revealed very controversial oddities and expenditures that the American taxpayers are footing the bill for.
And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either.
We have a whole list here, so hold on to your butts. I'm sure this whole list is only the tip of the iceberg. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces and business communities, including millions of dollars a year to expand employment opportunities for the gay community in Serbia. $70,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland. Funding for the first transgender healthcare clinic in India and the Transcare Clinic in Vietnam. $30 million to the WITS Health Consortium in South Africa for HIV research among sex workers and transgender individuals. Heck yeah. Allegations of USAID funding research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where COVID-19 is believed to have originated.
Function
research. That's not the question. The question is, did you fund coronavirus research in Wuhan, China?
Before my time, there was the PREDICT program with which you're familiar, which ended in China in 2019.
This is a $200 million program, and the GAO has also identified that some of these grants went directly to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where there is a suspicion that the lab leak began the pandemic.
This one's good too. Funding for the irrigation canals in Afghanistan, which reportedly benefited poppy cultivation, indirectly supporting the opium trade. Also in Afghanistan, they proposed building all these hospitals, and millions of dollars were squandered on these health scams, and none of the hospitals were ever built. I forgot to put on my geopolitical voice and pronounce this correctly. Okay. In Iraq, $20 million for an Iraqi version of Sesame Street to promote the LGBTQ XYZ agenda. They were also funding transgender operas in Colombia. Moving on, large investments in programs like disability inclusive climate action and an indigenous language technology program in Guatemala. In Haiti, their favorite place to exploit, post-2010 earthquake, $1.1 billion was spent on a port and power plant project promoted by President Bill Clinton. The project never built diddly squat. And this was interesting to me. They even fund the BBC, specifically BBC Media Action, to the tune of millions. Myself and others have been harassed by the BBC before with terrible articles written about us, misquoting us. You're telling me that my tax dollars in some weird loophole is going to fund inflammatory articles about myself, me, and other independent media? Are you kidding me? That's before we even touch on the Jimmy Savile topic. Each one of these bullet points certainly deserve its own deep dive. And while Americans struggle with inflation, taxes, skyrocketing costs, unaffordable rent and home prices, debt upon debt, USAID is squandering away taxpayer money to ideologically subvert various foreign populations while labeling it as humanitarian aid. Don't you want your money back?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
Just call it what it is. The whole thing is a CIA front. That's what it is. And we're their piggy bank. Every single person who has gotten on TV and cried about this, about the humanitarian fallout, I got something for you. Something a little special. I found it in my back pocket, and it says every single country, including our own, would be better off if the U.S. was not helping or giving humanitarian aid to foreign countries. They would be better off. This has gone on far too long. Also, it prompts the question, what else is being wasted behind the scenes? Actually, now that I think about it, because it doesn't fully encompass the nefarious edge to human suffering. That is inevitably the result of all of this. So what do you think, internet friends? You know, I always look forward to reading your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, supporting my channel on Patreon, and buying.
All right, I have her book. It's a good book. It's on the top shelf over there. But we don't have time to get to that because USAID has come into the conversation, and there's some interesting aspects to its history and its connection to the Skull and Bones and the people who funded communism and the Nazis. But we don't have time to go back in its history. We have to go forward in its history. Its participation in DARPA projects and EcoHealth and Wuhan lab for virology and fun stuff like that. But there was also mention during that blitz of media, Politico. If you don't know Politico or its history, it's pretty interesting. It recently was bought for $1 billion by a German press conglomerate that was formed in 1946, right after Tiny Mustache Man died. So Politico got sold for $1 billion. If you go into its history, its first writer was a guy called Mike Allen. And if you pop open Mike Allen, he is the executive director now of Axios, which is also a very anti-Trump kind of situation. The reason I bring up Michael Allen is because he has a very interesting father. I've read his father's work. his dad was called Gary Allen, was an American conservative writer. He promoted the notion that international banking and politics controlled domestic decisions, taking them out of elected officials' hands. It's almost like that problem he described as being solved right now by Doge. The irony is now his son's organization apparently is not getting their paychecks over there. His dad wrote several books. He was part of the John Birch Society, and I believe he wrote the book None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Here you go, with Larry Abraham. This is a very interesting book, 1971. There's not a lot of conspiracy literature back then. So I do have this. He quotes the Council on Foreign Relations, and he's basically pointing out the Trilateral Commission, stuff that people today would call the New World Order. Well, back in the day, Gary Allen and his intrepid partner, Larry Abraham, they wrote a little tiny pocket book. I have several of those genre. I'm looking to see where his might be. There was one on the Rockefellers. There's a couple of those that went around back then. And when I was first researching, those are some of the artifacts you can find at used bookstores. And so I was like, they're pointing out these things. And they don't have all the details, and they didn't have the internet. But I think None Dare Call It Conspiracy is one of the seminal books that help people kind of figure out that there's an international element that is circulating. This is a book 20 years before The Creature from Jekyll Island, and the books about the New World Order, globalism, internationalism are few and far between the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So those types of artifacts need to be known about. And if I get a chance, I'll pull them from one of the library shelves when I find them.
I got a copy of it right here. I got None Dare Call It Conspiracy right here. And it's funny, I bought this from Adon Salazar.
Oh, yeah?
Who's one of the main writers at InfoWars when I was in Austin. I've been involved, American Liberty Awards. Rachel Ray, his wife, was one of the main instrumental people behind that. So I got to be friends with her. And so last time I was in Austin, I went and hung out with them at their garage sale. And they had this sitting on the freaking table for like $1. I'm like, bro, I got you.
That's a piece of history right there.
Yeah. He had tons of really cool books too, dude. He had like some very rare ones. So he had the full Bloodlines of the Illuminati, like one of the original hardbacks.
Fritz Springmeier,
Fritz Springmeier. I was like, damn, like you cannot find that book anywhere. So anyway, good stuff.
And what he summarized in 1971 is also backed up by memoirs. Was it With No Apologies by Barry Goldwater. So you have a United States senator writing memoirs that backs up what Gary Allen and Larry Abraham were saying back then. But people called it conspiracy theory, and there was, in the 3 Days of the Condor motif, there was no place to print it. There's no place, like you're going to have to go to the people that are doing the thing that you're saying is going on to ask them to print it and tell on themselves. So they had a monopoly for a long time. And that's one of the things that I think the democratization of technology and the internet has helped to level that ground. And they've had to move their plan faster ahead than I think they wanted to, because people started catching on in a real way. And as people made more documentaries and did more research and, all these sort of things pop up, they were trying to censor it. But I think the fire in the minds of men has escaped their control. They're going to have to go to the robots and AI now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's just, it's really interesting. Like, it just seems like it's just like embezzlement, like straight up fraud. I can see the argument for, if you're a government worker needing a subscription for Politico to do your job, then maybe that's that. But it does have the vibe that they're just using it to just launder money towards these organizations to carry out their agendas. But I mean, the argument could be made. I'm glad that Jimmy covered it that way, because hearing this story reported in the news, it keeps being characterized as it's just them, funneling money in and just using it as an embezzlement scheme pretty much. But I guess I can understand that. But at the same time,
it's their giant siphon or pump into the money pool of this country, and they're just giving it. I mean, you got to respect your enemies' tactics sometimes. Like, they did that for a long time, bro. Since Kennedy, and it just stopped. For 90 days. We'll see what happens.
But. Yeah, it's crazy. So, yeah, I'm not giving them a pass. I'm still, on the side of this is just straight fraud, embezzlement, corruption to the core.
Well, we didn't get to the bioweapons yet.
Yeah, we haven't got anything yet. Yeah.
But that's coming up right now. All right, so in this block, Rand Paul exposed USAID role in creating coronavirus at Wuhan lab. Lauren Boebert raises Wuhan lab topic at hearing. The next one is Trump and Elon just waged war on the CIA as Wuhan lab connection exposed. Then we have redacted, breaking USAID created and funded COVID-19 virus and bioweapons. And then we have Matt Orfalea, Trump's lab leak conspiracy theory. So he's going to cut clips from when Trump was telling you what was up, how it came from China. He thinks it came from a lab. Everyone made fun of him, just like he was Gary Allen in 1971, said he's conspiracy theorist, that's fake news. And history wins out. People know over a span of time. And you're about to see what everyone's known from this audience for the past 4 years. But now we can show our friends and family, and they can level up, because this might be the first they've heard of these things. And they might be taken aback at this whole USAID funding bioweapons for the purposes of a new world order to crush human freedom forever. And that's no legacy to leave. I think we can do better. We're going to have to learn our way out. Let's go ahead.
Senator Paul. Ms. Powers, did USAID fund coronavirus research in Wuhan, China?
We did not fund gain-of-function research,
That's not the
as
question.
you know.
The question is, did you fund coronavirus research in Wuhan, China?
Before my time, there was the PREDICT program with which you're familiar, which ended in China in 2019.
This is a $200 million program, and the GAO has also identified that some of these grants went directly to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where there is a suspicion that the lab leak began the pandemic. Has USAID awarded funds to the Academy of Military Medical Sciences in China?
Not to my knowledge, but I'd have to get
I think the answer is once again yes. GAO has found that there have been subawards of NIH money, as probably as well as USAID money, that went to the Academy of not just medical research, military medical research in China. Now, part of the unknowns here is we can't get the records to look at this. So I've been asking for months and months for records. In September of last year, I wrote Ms. Powers, USAID, a request asking for records from the PREDICT program. These are not classified. These are simply records of scientific research, and we want to read the grants to find out what they were doing and whether the research was dangerous or not. The response I got from your agency was USAID will not be providing any documents at this time. They're just unwilling to give documents on scientific grant proposal. We're paying for it. They're asking for $745 million more in money, and we get no response. So 2 weeks ago, the ranking member, Risch, myself, and 25 other Republican senators, unfortunately, so far, signed a letter once again. It's still no response. We're not asking for classified information. We're not asking for anything unusual. 20 million people died around the world. You're supposed to be an agency that cares about the death of people around the world. We, talk about starvation and famine, and 20 million people died from a virus, and you won't give us the basic information about what grants you're funding around the world and who you're funding. Should we be funding the Academy of Military Medical Research in China? They're now off limits. But did we fund them? And who was making the decision? You know who ran the PREDICT program? UC Davis. Have you had any conversations with UC Davis about research in China and whether it was advisable?
So again, to set the record straight, first of all, the PREDICT program ended in 2019. We have people
and yet it goes on in other forums and other names.
That's certainly not USAID program.
Well, you have a program called Emergency Pandemic Threats Program still, don't you?
If I could just finish in response to the first set of allegations, we have provided hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents related to the PREDICT program for the very reason that you say, because we are in
not to us.
We are, again, as I know you had an exchange with Secretary Blinken as well, consistent with longstanding practice,
Not going
we
to
have
give them
been
to us.
responsive to the committees of jurisdiction.
Not going to. You've been
including the
consistent
Senate.
in not giving us any
That's not
information.
true.
But what you're
We've
saying
provided
is
hundreds of pages in response to the
To
chair and
whom?
ranking.
To
the
whom?
Senate, Homeland Security, and Government Affairs Committee, for example. We've had extensive
we've been requesting this and gotten none of it. I'm on that committee as well. The thing is what we get from you and from the State Department at large is that if Senator Menendez signs it, you'll give it documents. Until then, you'll give us nothing. And we have got nothing, zero. You said will not be providing any documents. I now have 25 senators have sent you a letter, and you aren't responding. And we don't. We want to see the scientific grants. We give you the money. The taxpayers give you the money. We deserve to know where the money went, whether it happened. Look, you're right. It ended in 2019. When did the virus come about? In about 2019. Some of the research proposals that came about in 2018 were Wuhan Institute of Virology asking for money to create a virus with a furin cleavage site in it, a coronavirus, a SARS-like virus with a furin cleavage site. That's exactly what COVID turned out to be. They wanted money to create such a virus. So we want to know, are there other research proposals that you either granted or denied that were on the same veins of creating viruses that could have become COVID-19? We can't tell because you won't give us the information.
Again, consistent with longstanding practice, we are providing extensive documentation. We have a whole team of people who do nothing other than look back and predict.
That is not true.
It is factually accurate.
That is not true. Everything we have asked, we have not gotten. I have not seen one document on the PREDICT program.
I understand that, again, consistent with common practice
Consistent
across
that you're not going to give
administration.
it to any senators.
No.
for
We're
that.
providing all of the kinds of documentation that you're
You are
describing.
not. You're
we
being
are.
dishonest. You're being dishonest. We haven't gotten one scrap of paper from you. Not one
again,
scrap of
with
paper.
the committees of jurisdiction, we are providing all of the paperwork that
You are not.
requested by the
I'm
chair
on the
and
other
ranking.
committee. I'm the ranking member on the other committee, and I haven't seen a scrap of paper from that committee either.
Well, that is.
See, here's what the
I
American
can tell you
people.
what has
the
happened.
American
Actually,
people,
I can't tell you what
the
happens
American
at the committee.
people think this: that because you won't respond, and because you respond with a non-response, that you have something to hide. I don't know if you have anything to hide or not. I want to see every grant proposal that had to do with coronaviruses that went to China from the U.S. government, from all facets of the U.S. government, and every bit of the Biden administration is stonewalling us and will not give us the information. It makes us think and makes us suspicious that you're hiding something. And it wasn't even you. This was the previous administration. We go back 2 or 3 administrations. We just want to see the information, and yet you sit there and you say we will do something, we are doing something, which is absolutely the opposite of the truth. You are not being honest.
Ms. Bobert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The outrage here has been absolutely unhinged. As we've seen in the media, we're seeing Politico, who's laying folks off, and as they're being defunded of American tax dollars, they can no longer sustain themselves. And so the outrage is just going to continue from those who are no longer going to be able to support their businesses from American taxpayers. And we simply want accountability. We want oversight. This is the Oversight Committee. And unfortunately, Congress has done a crap job of oversight and accountability over quite some time, I would say decades. And that is why we have this new commission that is created. And Americans are grateful for it. President Trump campaigned on having this DOJ commission to have oversight and accountability, and is of this new commission that is created, and Americans are grateful for it. President Trump campaigned on having this DOJ commission to have oversight and accountability, and it is our responsibility to codify what happens. I am pleased with the expedited efforts that have taken place to really get this out in the open and expose to the American people what their money is actually being sent to. And let's just be honest with the American people. Unelected bureaucrats have been funneling their hard-earned taxpayer dollars to ridiculous and even malicious causes. DOJ is doing the hard work to uncover the truth and make our government work for the people rather than funding policies that are actively hurting them. For example, Dr. Rush, in your testimony, you state that the recommendations from the Department of Government Efficiency will exacerbate public health crises. How is that the case when Doge is advocating to defund EcoHealth Alliance, which was involved in the research in the Wuhan lab that created coronavirus, that created this global pandemic that killed people and ended the livelihoods of many others?
My statement was in reference to across-the-board firings without specific.
I think government employees have been given the option. They can have
and those that will be given the option will be more competitive on a private market basis than those that stay. So then you'll be losing your best public employees.
Were our best public employees at the Wuhan lab of virology? Were those our best employees? Was that where our funding was going, to the best and the brightest who started a global
when
pandemic?
You make a 20% across the cut without any
I think there's been a lot of inefficiencies, and I'm excited to see where this goes and the exposure of that. And Dr. Resch, the last administration weaponized NGOs to aid and abet illegal aliens across and within the interior of the United States. We saw millions of taxpayer dollars being funneled to NGOs that were spent on plane and bus tickets, hotel rooms, and even to coach illegal aliens on how to illegally stay in the country. Heck, we have a congresswoman who is currently coaching illegal aliens on how to stay in the country, what terms to use, even if they are untruthful. Now, Dr. Resch, how does transporting millions of unvetted illegal aliens into our country make America safer? And how does stopping the funding of those NGOs harm America?
That is tangential and irrelevant to myself.
Oh, it is not irrelevant. Let's go through the list of relevancy, shall we? When we have open borders allowing millions of illegal aliens coming into our country unvetted, then the relevancy is in terms of Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Ruby Garcia, Elizabeth Medina, and I could go on and on and on and on with the American citizens who were killed at the hands of illegal aliens. So I think it's pretty relevant to say we need to look into these NGOs and what they are doing with these unvetted illegal aliens coming into our country and remaining into our country. Would you agree? Does that bring some relevancy to the topic, sir?
Not to workforce cuts across the American public service.
Well, but we're also talking about the funding that is going out. We are cutting spending at an executive level. And I hope that we codify all of that here within these chambers to ensure that it doesn't go out again. Now, in your testimony, you also mentioned that Doge proposals reflect an agenda to dismantle professional government. According to you, this is fundamentally at odds with the principles of democratic governance. In November, President Trump won by a decisive mandate promising to maximize governmental efficiency and productivity. And how are actions, these actions fulfilling the president's campaign promises fundamentally at odds with the principles of democratic governance? And while my time is running out, I want you to answer that, sir. But we hear about unelected folks. Democrats didn't even get a chance to vote for their own presidential candidate in their primary. So don't talk to me about unelected people actually being involved in the decisions in this country. But I would like to hear how that's at odds, sir.
I have no response to that.
Well, that's
Mr.
kind of
Chairman, the gentlelady.
I yield. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a document I'd like to submit for the record.
Proceed.
So this is a press release from the White House at USAID. Waste and abuse runs deep, and just some examples: $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for transgender comic books in Peru, $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, and these are just some of the many, many examples. And I would like to submit that to the record.
Without objection.
Thank you.
So ordered.
Why Musk and Trump want to shut this deep state asset down? Do you guys understand how big of a deal this particular story is? Like, do you understand how big of a deal this is? Connecting these guys to the Wuhan Institute of Virology and also shutting down this Cold War relic of CIA front money that they are just burying in the ground. You're done. Just like that. In one day, Elon and Trump are like, you're finished. Just like $50 billion a year. Done. This might be the biggest single day of Trump news that there has ever been in the history of Trump. Okay. So right now, we're going to talk about two stories in this video. We're going to talk about this one where Trump has given explicit instructions to advisors to evaporate Iran from existence if he is assassinated. He's also shut down the USAID organization and has connected that organization, which is a CIA front, according to many sources, to the funding of the Wuhan lab and specifically COVID-19 gain-of-function research. And that is a massive story. We're going to get into that, but we're going to do this one first, okay? Now, if you have not subscribed to my channel, I would appreciate it if you would do that. Help me continue to grow the channel. That is very helpful, and I appreciate you guys. All right, so we're going to start with Iran, and then we're going to get into the war that is being waged against the CIA by Elon and Donald Trump. But first, I want to tell you about the sponsor of this video, and this is a really important one if you own a home. Check this out. Now, if you don't own your home, it is fine for you to tune out for the next minute and a half, but if you do, it's time to listen up. Now, how many of you guys know what home title theft is? Because the FBI called. Trump says he's given advisors instructions for Iran to be obliterated if it assassinates him. President Donald Trump said Tuesday he's given advisors instructions to obliterate Iran if it assassinates him. If they did that, they would be obliterated, Trump said in an exchange with reporters while signing an executive order calling for the U.S. government to impose maximum pressure on Tehran. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. Federal authorities have been tracking Iranian threats against Trump and other administration officials for years. Trump ordered the 2020 killing of Qasem Soleimani, who led the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And a threat on Trump's life from Iran prompted additional security in the days before a July campaign in Pennsylvania, where Trump was shot in the ear, according to U.S. officials. But officials at the time say they did not believe Iran was connected to that assassination attempt. I mean, here's the deal, dude. Like, just because intelligence agencies are kind of targets of Trump and Elon in some cases, like, I don't think these guys are crazy enough to believe we don't need intelligence agencies. Of course we need intelligence agencies. And so there are stories that are absolutely true that come out of these things. It's not always a lie. Like Iran, threatening to assassinate Trump. Why would that not be true? You know what I mean? Like, what reason have we been given that that's not true? I think you need to take that threat very seriously. I mean, I can't imagine that there has ever been a president who is more like desired to get put down by more groups than Trump is, because he is literally taking. You want to talk bull in a china shop, but bull in a china shop sounds like undirected. They just run in, they break everything. I think Trump has been planning exactly what he's been doing with Elon and all these guys for years. They've known exactly what they were going to do, and they're coming in and executing it in flawless fashion. The Justice Department announced in November that an Iranian plot to kill Trump before the presidential election had been thwarted. You understand why they would do that, okay? There's only one president that killed one of their highest people. Like the Iranian government is not as big as the United States, right? Like, that was their guy. That was their big time general who ran all of those operations and ran the money that was going to all these terrorist organizations that were hitting us all over the place. And Trump hit him with a smart bomb. You think we couldn't have done that at any point? Trump's the only one that actually did it, right? The department alleged Iranian officials had instructed Farhad Shakiri, 51, in September to focus on surveilling and ultimately assassinating Trump. Shakiri is still at large in Iran. I'm shocked we haven't hit them for that already. Iranian officials at the time dismissed the allegation, with foreign ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei calling the report a plot by Israel-linked circles to make Iran-U.S. relations more complicated. Not impossible either, actually. Investigators were told of the plot to kill Trump by Shakiri, an accused Iranian government asset who spent time in American prison for robbery and who authorities say maintained a network of criminal associates enlisted by Tehran for surveillance and murder for hire plots, according to the complaint. I mean, it is really hard to know what you're looking at, because Israel does have an incredibly high-level intelligence agency, and so they want, they clearly want America at war with Iran, right? Because Iran is their number one adversary in the Middle East. How on earth would I be able to differentiate in a news story, who's behind it, Israel or Iran? I mean, you just have to take it seriously either way. You know what I mean? Shakiri, an Afghan national living in Iran, told the FBI that a contact in Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard instructed him last September to set aside other work he was doing and assemble a plan within 7 days to surveil and ultimately kill Trump, according to a criminal complaint unsealed in federal court in Manhattan. That sounds pretty crazy to me, be honest. That's the best you got? You know what I mean? That's the best you got? Trump recently revoked government security protection for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his top aide, Brian Hook, as well as former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who have all faced threats from Iran after they took a hardline stance against the Islamic Republic during Trump's first administration. Mike Pompeo, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency. So more war against the CIA in this story as well. And now we're going to move on to the other one. So massive bombshell when it comes to the Doge situation and what they are unraveling when it comes to where money was being sent and by who. I feel as though we are looking at a Titanic level deep state implosion. And something we never thought would happen. Like, did you ever really think that anyone was going to truly be able to unwind the deep state? Is that something that anyone thought was going to happen? And it's like, these guys have gotten to work so fast. And this USAID, USAID organization that was distributing billions and billions and billions of dollars, which, by the way, is a very, very tricky name because it sounds like USAID. They're not sending aid anywhere. USAID stands for U.S. Agency of International Development, okay? One of those tricky names that these people use, like these super PACs and every other. You understand that Elon Musk has access to all of the distribution line items from the Federal Reserve. So when people said that and, oh my God, Elon has access to all the distributions, it's like, yeah, he could see where all of the money is going. And then he could see where we are sending money, so on and so forth. Now, the fact that they got on these guys so fast means someone on the inside knew who they were, okay? But these guys have now been connected to the COVID-19 thing, to the development of the, COVID-19 development, the Wuhan lab, so on and so forth. So we're going to jump right into this because this is a big day for Trump. Okay, so the U.S. Agency for International Development has long been a central figure in the global health initiatives, including funding research on emerging infectious diseases. Really, like, how would anyone have known that? The USAID organization, distributes $50 billion a year. You're like, oh, cool. That must be like where, aid. And they're saying it's a CIA front. Okay. That's what I was hearing yesterday anyway, was that it was a CIA front and they're sending money to the Wuhan Institute for Virology. Why is that? Are they developing bioweapons maybe? I don't know. Okay, so one of its most significant programs, PREDICT, launched in 2009, aimed to identify and monitor pathogens and pandemic potential. Through PREDICT, USAID provided grants to various organizations, including EcoHealth Alliance, to study viruses in wildlife and assess their potential to infect humans. And apparently also to, pay to develop them into much worse versions of the pathogens so then we can address them somehow. Like, where is the example where gain of function research led to a pre-created solve for one of these things, right? Like, is there a single example of that? Is there a single example? Because you guys understand what
you on this Tuesday. Lots of breaking news happening just moments ago with the FBI front. We're going to get to that. We'll talk about RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, plus the latest on this USAID. Who you are, were you involved in this witch hunt, and let us know. And you need to tell us, because we're going to. Now, Trump was asked about the other day, would he oust these FBI agents? And he basically didn't say anything about it. He said he'll let Kash Patel straighten things out when he's in as head of the FBI. So he didn't come right out and flat say it that he's going to kick these FBI agents out, these corrupt FBI agents. But I imagine that Kash Patel ultimately will. So I
think we want to know too. We want to know who was working based on their political ideologies instead of by the book. We should want to know that as well.
I think so. Well, we should also want to know more about USAID. Now, someone in the chat room just a few moments ago said, hey guys, remember, this is like just a scapegoat, USAID. Well, of course, we're talking about all these NGOs that USAID funneled money to. So we're going to cover deeply all of those pieces. And also Dan Cohen is going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. live to talk about Marco Rubio, because a lot of this is now going to be absorbed under Marco Rubio at the State Department. So will it live on with neocon Marco Rubio? We're going to get to the bottom of that.
Well, he's rebranded. I mean, this is strange. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to that.
We do, but we are just at the tip of the iceberg on how bad USAID actually was. We're learning some disturbing details about the crazy funding that took place at USAID, but nothing could have prepared us for this. According to reports, USAID funneled $53 million to EcoHealth Alliance, which then used U.S. taxpayer dollars to support gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan lab in China. And that research very likely led to the creation of COVID-19. So let that just sink in for a second. Your taxpayer dollars were used to create COVID-19. You paid for it. And then the CIA, and then the CIA covered it up.
Yes.
Because after all, USAID was just a front organization for the CIA.
Okay. The CIA just last week admitted in advance of this that, COVID probably came from a lab, which they already knew based on this. Also, we saw during the Biden administration that the House committees that investigated the COVID pandemic concluded that the United States government must never again give money to EcoHealth Alliance. That's the same EcoHealth Alliance that we heard from congressional investigation committees last year. I just wanted to remind you of that. We already know they're bad guys.
Wasn't the doctor that received some of the funding of patient zero? Like, didn't that come out too?
That I'm not sure of.
I'm not sure about that.
That's what I was reading in that document that was released.
Okay. Well, we'll have to dive more deeply into that. But yeah, I don't know. But I do know this, that Elon Musk just posted this. Did you know that USAID, using your tax dollars, funded bioweapon research, including COVID-19, that killed millions of people? Just so you understand, EcoHealth Alliance is a U.S.-based nonprofit organization that focuses on research emerging from infectious diseases, particularly those originating in animals like bats, in deep caves in China. It was led, of course, by Dr. Peter Daszak, and it partnered with the Wuhan Institute of Virology to do bat coronavirus research before the COVID-19 pandemic. But of course, it gets worse than that, because EcoHealth Alliance has a long, cushy relationship with Dr. Fauci over at NIH. In fact, Fauci funneled millions of dollars from USAID through the NIH over to EcoHealth Alliance. So it's one big money laundering operation. So Fauci subcontracted the creation of COVID-19 using money from USAID, funneled to EcoHealth Alliance, led by Peter Daszak. Follow this? And then, according to CIA whistleblowers, the CIA offered to pay off 6 CIA analysts who discovered that, yes, COVID-19 was created and born inside the Wuhan lab, essentially. The CIA also then burned the documents, blurred out and hid these documents to hide all of the evidence. This was a bombshell story last week. I think we had the update last week. So the CIA covered it up. Once it leaked out, killed millions of people worldwide. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here at all like this.
Excuse me. All right, move on. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
So it gets worse for USAID. Again, we're just at the tip of the iceberg for just how bad USAID really is. So let's run just a few of them really quickly here. USAID spent $41 million on the 2024 parliamentary elections in Georgia, trying to disrupt the country of Georgia's elections. The BBC, yes, the British Broadcasting Corporation runs on USAID money. In fact, on the BBC's own website, you'll see their top donors. And yes, USAID right there at the top of their donors list for the BBC. I'm glad we're funding the British Broadcasting Corporation.
Yeah.
We also learned that USAID has been funding another evil organization, the World Economic Forum, the WEF. Yes, Klaus Schwab receiving money from USAID taxpayers. Here's Representative Francis Rooney on that point.
I found out that AID has given money to support the World Economic Forum. Why would the United States taxpayer be subsidizing the World Economic Forum when everybody that arrives over there arrives in a Gulfstream G5?
Exactly. We also learned the USAID was funding pro-LGBTQ groups in Russia to push a trans agenda in Russia. And they separately were funding atheist activist groups in Russia. Why? Ask yourself, why would they be pushing like an anti-religion agenda and a pro transhumanist agenda in Russia?
I can give you a simplistic answer is to sow social discord.
Yeah, there you go. And that you are paying for it. We also know the USAID funneled $15 billion into Syria to overthrow the Assad government. They did it through NGOs, of course, in Syria. USAID was also involved in the child sex trafficking operations in Guatemala. The NGO called Save the Children, as journalist Ryan Mata uncovered, Save the Children received tens of millions in USAID money. Save the Children was raided by the Attorney General's office in Guatemala just a few weeks ago for sex trafficking of children.
And we reported here on the show that the person on the board was none other than
Jill Biden. So look at these numbers. All of these USAID payments can be found on the White House website. They published the receipts about how much money has gone to Save the Children. But you can go to their website and you can look at all of the USAID waste and abuse, how it runs deep inside the government. There it is. There it is. And also, we just another $1.5 million for DEI in Serbia, $70,000 for DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for transgender opera in Colombia.
Sorry, I missed that.
$2 million for sex change and LGBT activism in Guatemala. And coming up here in just a few minutes, Dan Cohen, journalist from Uncaptured Media, is going to be here because USAID has been absorbed into Marco Rubio's State Department. How much of this will come under a neocon like Rubio? How much will this continue? So we'll talk to Dan in a second.
Well, President Trump has to walk a delicate line with his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who many say is the paymaster of the United States and dictates our foreign policy. Hard to argue that most of the wars we've been dragged into in the last several decades have been led by the nose by Israel. So what will President Trump do? Will he say to Netanyahu, whatever Israel wants, whatever you're doing is okay? There is many who say that these two men don't actually like each other. What will happen? Now, President Trump has many times said that he supports Israel. Several of his executive orders have been against anti-Semitism, protecting one religious group over others. That's the first religious group that the Trump administration has reached out to protect. So what will happen? On the one hand, though, we get very mixed messages out of President Trump himself. On the one hand, he was critical of Israel, saying he's seen the horrors inflicted on the people of Gaza. So acknowledging this genocide, that's a start. People brutalized, homes destroyed, infrastructure. But will the ceasefire hold? Here's what he said recently.
Do you still have doubts that the ceasefire will hold?
On what?
On the Middle East, do you think the ceasefire will hold?
I have no assurances that it'll hold. I mean, I've seen people brutalized. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. No, I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold. Steve, you might want to say something about that. Steve Woodcock?
It's holding so far. So, and we're certainly hopeful, and that's the president's direction.
Years ago, President Trump suggested that COVID very well may have came from a lab in Wuhan, China. And many members in this very room mocked him for that.
Flashback. President Trump is pushing a conspiracy theory that coronavirus began in a lab in China. Trump said he believed the Wuhan lab conspiracy theory.
The theory from the lab, something that's just a conspiracy theory.
This conspiracy theory.
Racist conspiracy theories are nothing new for the Trump administration.
The president is about to launch this campaign on the basis of a conspiracy theory that this virus emerged from a laboratory.
Donald Trump turning his intelligence community to now investigate a conspiracy theory about COVID coming from a lab.
The president entertains conversation of conspiracy theories.
Unfounded lab conspiracy theories promoted by Trump. Trump TV's escape from the lab theory.
One of Trump world's most favorite conspiracy theories.
A flurry of conspiracy theories.
These are conspiracy theories
peddled quite heavily by the Trump administration that the virus is linked to the lab in Wuhan.
Trump has been raising the possibility, but scientists debunk the lab accident theory.
Trump is pushing this theory that the virus was accidentally released from a lab in Wuhan. That's his new angle to feed the wingnuts, to treat this virus like it was a conspiracy of some kind.
It should have never happened. This plague should never have happened. It could have been stopped
but people chose not to stop it.
What people? Dr. Fauci is shooting down theories after President Trump linked the virus to a lab in Wuhan.
Dr. Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China. And yet, Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum.
The president floating conspiracy theories.
Dr. Fauci shot down the lab theory.
The problem, president is once again not synced up with his intel community.
The intelligence community has already come out to say that this is not a human-made virus.
He already was told that there's no evidence that this is man-made.
Trump pushed agencies to hunt for evidence to support an unsubstantiated theory. I mean, you could stop right there and say, what gives, but
nobody's buying Trump's Wuhan lab theory.
It is ridiculous and debunked conspiracy that the coronavirus was developed by these mad scientists in a Chinese lab.
Conspiracy theory to foment xenophobia.
Donald Trump's peddling conspiracies.
This is just fake news from the White House. Conspiracy theorists were parroting the president's own approach here.
The Trump administration's conspiracy theories of the origins of the coronavirus.
Trump's COVID-19 origin theory is pure baloney.
Scientists are also skeptical of Donald Trump's claims. There is virtually no chance COVID-19 emerged due to a laboratory accident.
Trump flirts with China lab conspiracy theory, but experts rule out the possibility.
President Trump fueled the fringe theory that the virus came from a lab.
Trump pushed an unsubstantiated theory.
President Trump claimed the new coronavirus leaked out of a lab in China. Scientists say the chances of a lab accident are very small.
It's looking like this theory is kind of on thin ice.
Donald Trump's conspiracy theory suggesting the coronavirus was man-made.
Trump's favorite theory is dubious. The virus did not originate in the lab. This discussion is basically over.
President Trump claiming that it came from a lab. Theories that have been shot down by scientists.
Just talking off the top of his head comes conspiracy theories. The president just said it may have come out of a lab.
The president and those conspiracy theories.
Trump's insidious false claim COVID-19 started in a lab.
That lab leak theory, you've heard so much from Trump, that's the least likely option.
Not even among the options is the scenario depicted by Donald Trump. Am I reading that correctly?
I think you are.
The Trump administration really alone on the world stage in pushing that theory that it did escape accidentally from a lab.
The Trump administration is so desperately grasping at straws, trying to find someone to blame, they just want a convenient scapegoat. A convenient scapegoat. A convenient scapegoat. A convenient scapegoat.
And I've said right from the beginning, it was the lab in Wuhan. It got out.
It took many years for it to come out, but the president was right in this instance again.
And it lives on tape forever.
The New York Times science reporter tweeted that the lab leak theory has racist roots.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
There are some, at least one White House official, who used the term Kung Flu, referring to the fact that this virus started in China. Is that acceptable? Is it wrong?
Kung Flu? Yeah.
Donald Trump's use of racist terms to describe the Chinese source of COVID-19.
Kung Flu.
President Trump using a racist term last night to talk about the coronavirus.
Kung Flu.
President Trump using a racist term to describe the coronavirus.
Use the term Kung Flu. My question is, do you think that's wrong? Kung Flu. And
Seems that everybody is still Kung Flu fighting.
Yeah. And you know, so obviously we have a paper trail, a money trail going to the Wuhan lab and all that from USAID. And we also know now that each one of those media outlets that are, spouting out all that nonsense also receive money from USAID. So it's just funny how that works.
It's almost like without USAID and DARPA and EcoHealth and Tony Fauci, you wouldn't have had a pandemic in the first place.
100%. Or those media outlets, like you saw, the flashbacks of
the repetition of Gustave Le Bon.
Yep.
If you've been paying attention in this episode, it all comes together.
The repetition, the symbolism, and just the tickers, just in the corner of those news broadcasts where it was showing, the number of deaths and the number of cases, like the psychosomatic trauma that caused people were thinking. I am a firm believer that, you might have a little cold or something, but you will blow it up in your head to think, oh my God, I have this deadly flu. And then it's going to exacerbate the symptoms that probably wouldn't have been there had you not just been psychologically manipulated, right? The placebo effect, the nocebo effect, all these things that do have physiological effects on us just when we get into a state of fear, like it gets exacerbated. So,
well, I think that's what they wanted with the warning signs on records and warning signs on tobacco and cigarettes and stuff like that. Remember, it's like if you are doing something that lowers your stress that you enjoy and there's a big warning that says this is going to kill you on it, like, what do you think that does? Europe, they write it even bigger. They like, right? So there's like that fear or terrorism that they're casting with words. It's like spellbinding, right? So I'm not saying that those things outside of moderation don't cause harm. I'm just saying, do you think it's good that, you're interrupting the relaxation of doing the dangerous thing with like the stochastic terrorism of some statistics that you guys cooked up in your little USAID budget meeting at some point? So anyway, Brown and Williamson aside, there are ways that they use to like make people scared. And we should learn how to see our way through such things. Being educated is a lot easier than being the deep state's bitch, right? If you learn about like the CIA is a subject under the deep state. It didn't create the deep state. The deep state creates things like the CIA and USAID to do their dirty work out there. And if we go over to the Predict program, which was mentioned, that's furin cleavage sites and Metabiota and USAID getting together with EcoHealth Alliance. And, it's interesting if we go to the article where they shut it down. Let's go back to the browser right here. Shut down of Predict infectious disease program. Challenged by Pocahontas. USAID. These are the people. Look, they're playing with bats in the picture, for Christ's sake. This is global biodefense, right? Do you see the picture? But it's crazy to talk about these people having any type of malicious intent for your freedom. They would never plunder your production. The people that play with the bats, the Batman and the Batgirl playing in the Bat Cave at EcoHealth. So, again, traditional listeners to this podcast for the past 4 years already knew all these types of things about USAID, Predict, Preempt, DARPA, Drastic, EcoHealth, Peter Daszak, Tony Fauci, all that sort of stuff. But now the wider population is now taking note, which is what we need. We need to strengthen numbers. We don't need like 10 smart people 4 years ago. We need, millions of smart people updated because it finally made, the news finally made it to them. And the jig is up, and they're going to try to do it again at some point. And I don't want their tactics to ever work again like they worked in 2020 through 2023. That sucked. And they did it on purpose. And people died, and loved ones died alone. And that should never, ever, ever have happened on our watch. But it did. So we need to own up to it and never let it happen again. That is our never forget moment in America, more so than 9/11. That all those elderly people and all those, dude, people put in 8, 9, 10 decades on this planet, and that's how they had to go out. They survived all sorts of other crazy shit, but some governor's mandate kills them in a nursing home because no one will go in and change their catheter or whatever the fuck's going on. So anyway, all those deaths have never been adjudicated. Maybe Doge will get around to such things.
Yeah, not only that, but I say it's still going on. People are still having health effects from the experimental injection, and it's still a thing. It's still a major thing. So I won't rest until there's justice. This is my beat right here, the injection situation. So
also, when I just talked about the deep state, I know somebody out there said there's no such thing as the deep state. I know, and we'll get you a lollipop soon as you read this. Okay, just letting you know. That's not some crazy website. That's Haaretz. That's their website. Netanyahu. Deep state controls Israel. There's no democracy here. He's part of it too. He should know what controls over there. So it's not my conspiracy theory claim. I just know how to read. That's it. What's your problem? I don't understand.
Exactly. Deep state, New World Order. These are their terms.
I mean...
Yeah.
I mean, it's their fucking terms, man. It's like, they write plans. Oh, did my camera go out again? All right. We're going to do it live. I'm going to just deactivate and activate it. Let's go back. See if it works. There we go. Focus that in. First edition, H.G. Wells. Read 'em and weep. How about New World Order by Anne-Marie Slaughter of Princeton University, Woodrow Wilson School of Government? That's a pretty official book. Have you read that one to say it doesn't exist? It's their own lingo. We know how to read. We use the labels that they call themselves. People are still like, that doesn't exist. Well, I'm sorry, you don't know how to use your 5 senses yet. Let me know when you graduate, and then we can have an adult discussion. Because, these are adult topics for people who want to survive and thrive and not be subject to their slavery. All right, so Trump's conspiracy theory, that Orf clip. I don't know if he uses AI to scrub all of YouTube to find all those phrases or what the process is.
He's got a clip Genie situation going on there.
Something going on. I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig it the most, man. All right. So USAID, they're not done. They gave a whole bunch of money to this place called the Clinton Foundation. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They're like a gangster group out there. They also got a bunch of money, Clinton Foundation, from HSBC, which is also narco-terrorism, drug money funding. So it's a finite planet. There's only so many people here fucking with us. They've been doing it for a long time, and they have well-defined groups and working papers that you can read up on. This next block here goes into USAID. So we mentioned BBC, USAID money. Israel, USAID money, and now we're gonna have Clinton Foundation because Hillary, she needs money to acid wash more servers and to have more pizza parties. Apparently, a friend of mine said that, though. I was just repeating it. And then wait. So it's 3:00 now. I need to be able to get in this truth stream. Liberty cannot exist in a panopticon. And then I had some Michael Aquino psyops, but we don't have time for that. Future Shock, 1972. We'll play the first 5 minutes of that. So we're going to go to this block. We'll keep it short. And then this other one will be our concluding block. There was also a Sabby Sabs video about Ian Carroll being a Fed. And I don't know. He did come out of nowhere and get a lot of followers. Where everyone else who talks about the same stuff, me included, we don't get so much distribution, right? So there's Derek Rose, there's Whitney Webb, there's Ryan Christian, there's any number of people I know who have been telling it like it is, and you don't get very far in distribution telling it like it is. It's not very well rewarded. And all of a sudden, here's this dude who picks up 1 million followers on every platform, lickety split. And anyway, she was inquiring and there were some questions, so maybe we'll get to that, but let's go to this so we can get to Liberty cannot exist in a panopticon, Stargate type of situation, which will follow on to the ideas we laid out, I believe, last week or the week before. All right, so let's go to Redacted. Then we have, we'll keep it short with Benz and Crowder because we don't want to get too redundant, but I do want to get the broad spectrum of USAID. It's not just one area. The fact that the pandemic, that's a big deal. The fact that they're doing all this stuff and giving away for woke agendas, that's a big deal. But it's they got layers and layers, like an onion that's not funny that can't buy InfoWars. So let's go ahead and we'll get this clip in the bin.
Well, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, which is a front, of course, for the CIA, has been effectively shut down now following an announcement by Elon Musk that President Donald Trump agreed to close the agency. And just this morning, you can see all of the kerfluffle outside there. I love they're saying USAID saves lives, which is hilarious to me when you think about the regime change operations around the world and how many people have died. How about the million?
Oh, no, they're just deciding whose lives they carry.
How about the million Ukrainians who've died at their hands as a result of the regime change there? So, yeah, these protests are additionally more than 600 employees reported being locked out of the agency's computer systems today. The doors basically shuttered. You can see Democrats holding a press conference there. They have a larger budget than the CIA. They're responsible for regime change operations around the world, like in Ukraine in 2014. They were given $5 billion of your tax dollars. to carry out a coup in Ukraine, of course, led by Victoria Nuland. President Trump was on the tarmac and he said, USAID is run by lunatics.
Well, it's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
So Jamie Raskin, among other Democrats, were there at this little protest today to basically call Donald Trump a dictator and how we have to save USAID. Watch him.
Elon Musk, you didn't create USAID. The United States Congress did for the American people. Right. And just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
Never mind the fact that JFK signed an executive order creating USAID, so it wasn't Congress, but don't let facts get in the way. Here's Ilhan Omar, who also had something to say about the Trump dictatorship. Listen.
We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made.
Wow, it's almost like they're probably making a lot of money from USAID, that they would get out in the cold weather and give a speech like that. They must be making some money. Let's ask Peter Schweitzer, president of the Governmental Accountability Institute, the author of like 100 books. Excellent books, by the way. Here's one, Secret Empires. Here's another one, Extortion, how politicians extract your money, buy votes, line their own pockets. And Peter, I think I interviewed you a number of years ago when your book on Clinton cash came out, and it's unbelievable to see how the Clinton Foundation tied to USAID, all these Democrats out there in the cold complaining and crying about it. It all kind of comes together, doesn't it, Peter? Good to see you again.
Great to see you guys, too. Thanks for having me, Leland. No, you're right. I mean, the Clintons are an example of how the political class has enriched themselves through USAID, but they are hardly the only example. And that's the problem. It's really twofold. Number one, there are certainly things that USAID has done. You talked about Ukraine that are very troublesome. But it used to be that USAID was supposed to be an extension that protected American interests. Under Barack Obama, that changed. It then became the focus of advancing the so-called millennial goals that have been established. So it no longer became about projecting American power, American influence. It became about, affecting climate change and affecting migration. So it's totally went off of its original Cold War mission. The second problem is the one you alluded to specifically, which is a lot of the money does not go to help poor people overseas. It goes to consultancies in places like Arlington, Virginia, or Bethesda, Maryland, that are run by former politicians that rake in cash doing, quote unquote, consulting work on development in these countries. With the Clintons, it happened in Haiti. With the Bidens, certainly Burisma, that corrupt energy company that Hunter Biden was involved in, they were getting support from USAID. So this is an enrichment program, not for poor people in the developing world, but for the Beltway political class.
Now, most of this is run through the State Department in the same way they use the National Endowment for Democracy to decide. And the guise of it is that other countries are so backwards, they don't know how to be a democracy. They don't know how to be progressive when it comes to women's rights and gay rights. And they need us to go and teach them this, which is an incredibly ethnocentric and arrogant mission. So what do you think? I mean, and it's false also. It's a lie. So what do you think these people protesting are actually protesting for? Is it just they don't want Donald Trump to do anything that he wants to do? Or do they actually like the idea of being the boss of the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, I can't look into their heads. I can speculate, but I would imagine some of the people there are probably true believers, right? They actually believe that U.S. taxpayer money should be given to them and given to their allies because, of course, a lot of this money goes to non-governmental organizations upon which former USAID employees sit on the board or are actually collecting salaries. But some of them may be true believers in saying they're entitled to this and they know how to run the world. But I would argue that probably a lot of it has to do with this class of people that have set up consultancies, part of these public-private partnerships that exist to try to fix the world. And the sad fact is it has not worked. It will not work because of the problems in the developing world are oftentimes deep cultural problems related to corruption and other matters. And pumping a lot of government money into those environments is not going to improve the situation at all. So there's a lot of self-interest here. International banks, Wall Street, they love USAID-backed projects because they're guaranteed. They love USAID and other government-backed loans that happen in the developing world because it minimizes risk. And these are the people that are ultimately going to be hurt by ending USAID.
Oh, yeah. Also, it's gender ideology training in Peru. I mean, the list is endless for how much, the U.S. taxpayer dollars go to these ridiculous DEI programs around the world and all of this. And someone in our chat room here just made the point. Dana says, it's not U.S. aid. We need to remember that because you're hearing that, of course, all over TV. It's U.S. aid. It's not. They're not. I think that we shove that name in there and make it sound like it's friendly and sharing it. But talk about the CIA connections here because Robert F. Kennedy kind of blew the lid on that, Peter, a few months ago on Tucker's show when he talked about USAID really being a front for the CIA, larger budget than the CIA, responsible for regime change operations like in Ukraine. How connected is the CIA here in USAID?
Yeah, well, the person in the chat room is quite right. It's not USAID. It's the U.S. Agency for International Development. Right. That is the official name, and it functions as supposedly developing in the developing world. And you're quite right that USAID is connected to the State Department. The State Department is kind of the preferred cover for CIA operatives operating overseas. They might be working in the embassy. They might not be in the embassy. They might be in an NGO, but USAID offers them the opportunity to carry out those policies, and it also gives them money, large sums of money. Back in the 1950s, before USAID, the CIA would have to take money out of its own coffers. It would have to get authorizations from the Intelligence Committee to spend $500 million somewhere. Now you can use aid dollars. So if you want to do something in, say, Botswana, you simply provide grants and support through NGOs to your preferred political candidate in that country. So that's how it works. So, eliminating it is, I think, a great solution. Greater transparency on our overall aid program overseas, I think, would be a great idea because there are others beyond USAID. And I think we need to have transparency not only to know what ends that money is being given, but what the results are, because these programs are rife with corruption, and we don't find out about them because of their sort of secretive nature.
But something that the Trump administration has indicated is that some of the leftovers that does not poof into the ether will be absorbed into the State Department. And we've seen signaling from Marco Rubio saying, look, we're staying in our own backyard. We're not going to go abroad and tell people how to think and how to live and try and regime change.
Do you believe him? Do we believe him?
I'm not sure I believe that, but I'm shocked to hear it out of a government official. And so is there could that be true, that we now honor the idea of a multipolar world, whereas live and let live, respect your neighbors and how they want to run their own countries, sovereignty, that kind of thing? Or is there some kind of fear that this ethos would be absorbed by the State Department and we'll keep doing things like this? Or
that Marco Rubio is a neocon and then his true colors will show? Well,
you just led the witness.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know exactly what Marco Rubio is going to do. What I do know is this: the early signs from the Trump administration is that they're going to deal with the world in a very simple way. If you are our adversaries or our enemies, countries like Iran or China, you better be very afraid, because he's prepared to use military force if needed. That doesn't mean putting a bunch of boots on the ground, but using things like missile strikes. If you were Iran and you were going to damage the United States, we're going to come after you. But what he's also showing is he's going to deal with American allies or ostensible friends differently as well. I mean, for decades, we have dealt with countries like Mexico and Colombia and Paraguay and Uruguay, for example, by saying, hey, we'll give you aid dollars. We'll give you lots of money, and then try to help us out if you can. That has not worked out well. All you have to do is look at a country like Mexico, which is effectively run by the drug cartels, which is the gateway for fentanyl in the United States. The Mexican government's known this since the fentanyl crisis began over a decade ago, and they've done nothing. And what Trump is essentially saying to them is, we're not going to try to bribe you anymore. We're going to use a different stick, and we are basically going to say, you don't have access to our market without a big tariff unless you start doing the stuff that we're telling you to do. And the reason is, you should not take friends for granted. And countries like Mexico have taken the United States for granted. And Trump is going to change that, I think, by different tools. We're not going to throw money at you anymore. We are going to put tariffs on your goods and damage your economy if you don't cooperate. And I think that's a very good and healthy step in the right direction, and away from the USAID model of effectively trying to bribe these people, and the bribery just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think we've had it with these NGOs. You're absolutely right. Peter Schweitzer has been our guest. I would encourage all of you to go wherever you buy books these days. He's got a fabulous library of fantastically written books. You can read Secret Empires, about the hidden corruption there, extortion, his Clinton cash. I mean, you want to read about the corruption in Washington, D.C., look no further than Peter Schweitzer. Peter, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
They run an unbelievable web of money laundering and shell companies. But there's a question of what level of dirty tricks do you go to in order to topple something that's authoritarian.
We do. I believe we have our guest on the line. I just want to be clear, because his titles are long.
It is.
All right.
Yes.
But he's been diving into all things USAID. If you've been actually following the story, you may not know this is the originator of a lot of this information. So this man was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Communications and Information Technology for the State Department. And he was appointed by Donald Trump. This was during the first term. He negotiated U.S. policy on internet diplomacy issues. And then after that, he founded the Foundation for Freedom Online. It's a watchdog group, largely dedicated to free speech and an open internet, and he has been doing a lot of the digging here. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. Mike Benz. Mr. Benz, can you hear me, see me, sir? Welcome to be here. Well, sorry, hold on, let me redo this. Glad to have you here. I meant to say welcome or glad to have you, and I screwed it up.
Glad to be had.
Okay, there you go. Well, careful. Don't threaten me with a good time. So, you've been talking about this at length. Let me ask you, what spurred you looking into USAID? I mean, I know obviously you were in the Trump administration, but you have been like a dog on a bone on this. Do you think this is even the most egregious example in government, or just one that is going to be pretty easy to prove?
I do think it's actually the most egregious, or certainly in the top 2 or 3 in government. But we're still at the very tip of the iceberg as to why. I think as this onion gets peeled more and more, what you're going to see is something that's actually central to almost all rogue aspects of the way American foreign policy has been run, and the way that the foreign policy establishment has been weaponized against domestic politics. The big no-no is that there's supposed to be a firewall between what the CIA does abroad and what it does at home. Right. This is the thing the CIA got in trouble for in the 60s and 70s. The Pentagon is not supposed to be doing stuff at home. The State Department's not supposed to be doing stuff at home, and USAID is not supposed to be doing stuff at home.
Can I ask you about that specifically? Because some people didn't fully understand. I want you to make it really clear. When you posted on X that USAID is how the CIA gets shit done, can you explain that to people who may not be initiated here?
Yes. So the CIA liaises with assets of the U.S. government that are capacity built in order to instrumentalize them for one of two purposes, to advance U.S. national security interests or to advance U.S. national interest. Basically, you can think of that like keeping us safe or making us wealthier.
Sure.
For example, if we need the oil in a country, we might do it out of national interest. If we need to topple a government to install a military base there because the prime minister is recalcitrant, then we would say that would be for national security purposes.
Okay.
But the point is that the CIA operates under a plausible deniability cloak. This is it was originally supposed to be parked at the State Department directly in 1948 when this was all being constructed. George Kennan's idea was to have, rather than a CIA operations division, have a State Department Bureau of Political Warfare. But that did not sync well with the UN Declaration on Human Rights, and so they made it a spy agency. And then the CIA started getting in trouble in the 1960s and 70s with all the scandals of what they were doing, and it moved a substantial amount of its operations into USAID, the humanitarian group. It was a sort of NGO plausible deniability layer for the intelligence world. And USAID is a swing player because it's an independent agency. So it can, what it does is it capacity builds the assets that the CIA then works with. So you can think of it as three stools when it comes to advancing U.S. national interests abroad. State Department sets the policy.
Sure.
The CIA will do the operations of telling our assets on the ground what to do and working with them. But none of that works unless those assets are capacity built, meaning they're given money, they're given resources, they're able to beef up their staff. What we do whenever we go into a country is we do what's called a baseline assessment. We look at all of our assets on the ground. We look at how that syncs with our intended foreign policy in the region. We say, okay, what do we have versus what do we need? And USAID plays the lion's share role in plunging that gap to provide those. For example, if we have 14 NGOs in the area and they only have a little bit of money, USAID will find ways to funnel money so that if the State Department says we need 50, or if the CIA says we need 50, USAID will find a way to multiply those institutions and it will run the money to them. And so they really are, you can't have operations without financing for it. And so USAID plays that role for DOD, for CIA, and for state. And that's why they've become really the most important institution in American foreign policy.
My follow-up question is, and I know this isn't obviously your framing or fault, you say independent organization. I don't think that means what people think it means at this point. Like, we use this term NGO, and I know people will try and fact me where I say this has no legitimate role in government. People are like, well, it's not a government organization. It gets its funding from taxpayers. Can we be clear about this? This is the problem that we face. This is the swamp, right?
Oh, yeah, they don't mean independent from the government. They mean independent from us.
Right, yes.
It's an unauditable black hole. This is the sort of thing that our former Trump 1 Attorney General made his bones doing when Bill Barr started his career in the CIA and then was put by the CIA through night law school and then worked there for 7 years. His marquee job was the CIA's liaison to Congress in order to block congressional oversight of the Central Intelligence Agency during the Iran-Contra scandal of the 1980s. Yep. And he was heralded by the CIA for blocking Congress's ability to oversee the agency. And that is what you see today inside of USAID. And one of the reasons that it's so impossible to get to what they do, and they run an unbelievable web of money laundering and shell companies. I've mentioned this before, but just take one example of USAID's building of the fake social media website called Zunzaneo, which was at a time when Cuba, and look, I'm not a fan of the Cuban, the Cuban government.
Of course
it isn't
not.
a oppressive government. But there's a question of what level of dirty tricks do you go to in order to topple something that's authoritarian. But U.S. at the time in 2014, Cuba had banned U.S. social media, so Twitter was not allowed, and the U.S. foreign policy establishment was gassed up over the success of the Arab Spring and the ability of the CIA and State Department to use Facebook and Twitter to angry up populations and get them to form smart mobs and take to the streets and overthrow governments. So they wanted to do a Cuban Spring, but the problem was they had no social media there.
Right.
So USAID was tasked with creating a fake Cuban version of Twitter. And so they took, in order to do this, they took humanitarian funds that were earmarked for Pakistan and redirected them through a web of shell companies and outside contractors to 2 Cuban businessmen, so it would look like it was coming directly from Cuba. And in the internal documents that were leaked at USAID, the explicit plan was to lure people in using algorithms favoring, quote, sports, music, and hurricane updates. And then once they hit a critical mass of subscribers to the site, they would switch the algorithm to favor anti-government sentiment, street revolutions, and the forming of so-called smart mobs to take to the streets. At the same time, USAID was paying rap groups. One in particular, called the San Isidro Movement, was taking direct money from from USAID, who was paying them to write anthems about how to overthrow the government so it could be played to the youth movement. Meanwhile, USAID's kissing cousin, the National Endowment for Democracy, was writing white papers in the background, doing their baseline assessment of the ethnic composition of Cuba. And what it figured out in a 2009 memo that USAID then carried over was that the Afro-Cuban community was underrepresented in the Cuban government, so they could be targeted with angry messages to be the front line. So they're fomenting race riots.
And also, they're not very good at it. If they were trying to lure people to Cuban social media, they did sports, hurricane updates. They should have just shown them the women. They have a natural resource there. We've seen them here. We've all seen Eva Mendes, correct? And this is the situation, too. People will say, I'm an extremist, where I say, look, the policy on Cuba should be either the United States goes in and liberates these people, does something, or not. But people who will say that's an extremist view, I'm not saying that we do. I'm saying we need to be clear in our position. Will at the same time defend what is obfuscated and what is opaque, which is effectively, like you're talking about, a soft coup and trying to foment basically racial hatred at that point, which wouldn't be the right way for them to go about it anyway. And no one in this office is hated more than Che Guevara. We were banned for a shirt making fun of him. I know Gerald does have a question, and I know you have a heart out. I wanted to get to Brazil here because we have a lot of people watching, but Gerald, you had a question for Mr. Benson.
Yeah, Mike, so I've seen a lot of people talking about different programs within USAID, and I'm not sure which people that are posting are necessarily saying stuff that's true or if they're making some incorrect connections. But you mentioned money laundering, and one of the connections that I've seen people trying to make is basically back through, from U.S. taxes to USAID to NGOs, and then somehow finding its way back into campaigns, PACs, and Dems. Is there a connection there, and is that the biggest money laundering kind of example you can give us, or is there something else?
Oh, there's a huge connection there. Yeah, this is one of the ways that the foreign policy establishment manipulates domestic politics is they take the huge glut of money that we have to manage the American empire abroad, but then if a domestic candidate or domestic political movement is threatening to change U.S. foreign policy, like Donald Trump, has been and currently is, they redirect those funds almost like a white blood cells in an immune system to descend on the internal. They call these the domestic drivers of foreign policy in order to root those out. And so
what's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering. I hope you're having an absolutely wonderful day. I know I am. It's just been an incredible 2 weeks of the Trump presidency. I can now report, you're going to want to leave a like for this one, all 10,000 employees at USAID have been terminated. I mean, technically they're on administrative leave, but we all know what that means. Completely shut down. The devil's purse has been closed. It will probably take a significant amount of time to figure out exactly where all the money was going and, where all the money was, and stopping it all. Just wait till they get the FBI, CIA, the Treasury Department. So much winning. Even when they stand in our way with some of these, like, judge blocks this, judge blocks that, just keeps moving forward. Hey, I want to shout out Coffee Brand Coffee, my coffee company. We have a spring sale right now where you can get our delicious Coffee Brand Coffee hot cocoa, which is real cacao. So you want to use milk with this. It's not instant, like, Swiss Miss crap. That's up to 35% off. The peppermint cocoa, obviously really, really good. We have all of our teas. A lot of people sleep on our teas. I think we have the best tea selection there is anywhere online. We have obviously our chamomile, gunpowder, green tea, Earl Grey, English breakfast, all 11% off. You can get the limited edition coffee brand coffee hat only until they're gone. They're only $10. So I'm basically selling them at a loss. Get them. Our coffee brand coffee vacuum mug, 60% off. And our gingerbread K-Cups, also 30% off. By the way, don't sleep on doing the gingerbread as a cold brew. It's absolutely delicious. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, it turns out the federal government was actually funding Feminist Frequency and Gamergate. Not just Feminist Frequency, but also several news outlets that published anti-gamer articles. Let's start with perhaps the most famous. Now, you got to be kind of an old head like me to recognize the name Anita Sarkeesian. So I'm going to give you a TLDR. Anita Sarkeesian is one of the world's greatest grifters. She is an activist that started a company at the exact right time, and she bilked millions of dollars, in my opinion, out of everybody. It was 11 years ago today when the very first video that she put out called Damsels in Distress Part 1, Tropes versus Women in Video Games, came out, in which she promised to produce this huge, long series.
It's in the record now that Gamergate was also USAID, but I don't know what Gamergate was in the first place. I don't feel like learning right now. I got important clips to get in before we end this episode. Comment on that other than USAID was, deeper than I guess I recognize. I had a bunch of stuff on it. It's like bingo, right? So like I had them involved with a bunch of stuff, but they're involved with a bunch more stuff I didn't have on my bingo card yet. So I got to do more research. They got all their fingers and toes in a bunch of different pies, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really shocking, all the revelations, just to the extent that, obviously everything we've seen trickled out throughout the media is orchestrated, it's contrived, it doesn't match with reality, it's so forced and faked. But, there's always just been this question of like, where is that influence coming from? Is it NGOs? Is it some foreign governments, you know what I mean? But it turns out it's just all right here at home. It's just so crazy, through NGOs as well. But man, it's really just an incredible revelation to see that it literally is like the United States government, like driving this, and then bad actors within it. It's just so crazy. And then all the regular cast, like the Clintons, and obviously they're involved. And it's just, is the gig up? Like the jig is up? Like, is that what's going on? Like, are we really getting to a new, just complete revolutionary era? I mean, it's just kind of crazy to even consider that that's even possible. It is really crazy.
Well, the Five Eyes network is part of the deep state. They've had a lot of surveillance, all that sort of stuff is international. Like the special agreement with Britain during World War II really combined America with all the other British Empire entities that they don't call an empire anymore. They're dominions, whatever you want to call it. But the things that the deep state is comprised of are basically all the things that your news would tell you don't exist, right? There's like, there's no Operation Gladio or, Rockefeller Foundation, NGO type of top-down, Reese Committee proven 80 years ago thing going on. Like, just go watch the new series that they put out. Go laugh at a Seinfeld laugh track for a while. Laugh tracks make all their difference, because if you watch those shows without laugh tracks, they're not funny.
It's really funny. Have you seen those without laugh tracks? Have you seen that? Yeah, like the Seinfeld without the laugh track. I've seen that before. It's really
Soup Nazi without the laugh track.
Yeah, it's really funny.
All right, cool.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come